And the winner is... Arctic Monkey!
That subscriber content, eh? That subscriber content, it just won't go away.
It might hibernate from time to time and sink back into the swamp. I think the cyclical nature of the universe in which it exists demands it adheres to some of its rules.
But it's always waiting there, just around the corner, ready to make its way into your ears and smash through the gated payment system, sounding better than ever.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Benefits such as getting ad-free episodes a week early with pre- and post-show chat relating to the monkeys, last Shadow Puppets episodes, bonus podcasts, watch-alongs, plus helping us improve our sound with better equipment and services.
Yeah, this podcast seems like it's fading away sometimes, but with subscribers, it will never die. Thank you very much for listening. We do truly appreciate it. Don't take that the wrong way.
Yeah, we'll invoice you for the subscription if we need to.
We're Arctic Monkeys. This is Don't Believe the Hype.
That rock and roll, eh? Ladies! That sound means it's the end of the round. Time for the bonus question. Cheers, dude.
That man just yawned.
We're gonna call it,
Don't Believe the Hype.
Hello and welcome to Don't Believe the Hype. And yes, that's not Nick speaking this week because we are having a bit of a change up. As we already said, we had a guest this week to join us on the show, Justin from the Straight Chilling podcast, who is joining us. But unfortunately, last minute, Nick has had a family emergency and it's going to be just me and Justin soloing it, not soloing it, duetting it. Keeping it real. But I'm sure I'm sure you could all tell from the Christmas episode that Justin's knowledge was pretty solid. So I think we're going to put together quite a capable episode, so don't worry. But Justin, hello, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me on again. I feel like the listeners at this point are thinking this is some kind of bit, like Justin and Nick can't exist on the same episode. It must be Nick doing some amazing American accent. Yeah. But no, yeah, thanks for having me on. It's this is going to be a fun one, I think.
No, yeah, it's cool, and it's a great track to do as well together. But yeah, it just is a bit strange. I will wonder if when we get you on for Suck It in C series, if something happens then as well. It's just a running joke.
If it's 3 for 3 at that point, I'll just call it quits. I'll say, okay.
You're never going to meet him. It just feels like Nick doesn't want to meet you.
Maybe.
But
he's just chilling at home right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it is a great episode for us to take the mantle of. It's not a laid back episode. There's plenty to talk about. That's for sure. And yeah, in fact, I just wanted to bring up to listeners as well that Justin is based in Korea. South Korea, obviously, in case some of you are wondering what his political status is. Just in case. But he is heroically joining us at it's 9 p.m. here, or 9 p.m. here when we record on a Friday evening, and he's joining us about, what is it, about
it's 5 a.m. now? Yeah.
5 a.m. Yeah. I mean, when I realized that, I thought, what kind of mad person would want to speak to us at 5 a.m. in the morning? I wouldn't want to speak to, certainly not Nick at 5 a.m. in the morning. It's never mind. Unless it's the other way around. You know, the good 5 a.m. when you've not been to, when you've
up,
just been up, yeah, when you've just been up, that's a good 5 a.m. When you've not, when you're getting up, that's not as good. But as Alex can attest to in a couple of series when we do AM. But yeah, so we're doing Fright Lined Dining Room. We're moving towards the latter stage of the B-sides of this era, and out into the wrap up and the break, unfortunately. But we will be coming back with a glorious Suck It and See, which, as you all know, will be extra special for me. And I can't believe it's landed on the summer as well, which is
that is
magnificent.
Perfect. Yeah,
it's so perfect. It's always my summer album anyway, but this has just got another edge to it now. Because I actually have a reason. I can keep saying to my girlfriend, she's like, "You're putting it on again." I can go, "It's research for the podcast. I've got to listen to it." So it's all good excuses to get in. But without further ado, shall we have a listen to the track in question? Fright Lined Dining Room.
He spies through the sights. And meanwhile in the desert, only costume shop, the cowls hang and wait to rot away. mercies of the willing. Swam back to sugar in the night, rocketing shutter doors despite the shop not opening for hours. You can it, frap and whistle, and try to avoid the top. As I scribbled over dribble, you were snoring, showing up. The tumble splits the frame, revealing silken bits in the Fright Lined Dining Room. Roll against the walls and while they feast.
Oh, that is a song, isn't it? I mean, we'll get into it when we get to the music and what your thoughts
Yeah.
are and how much you like it. But it is in my opinion, a special song. That it's actually one of those moments when you go, a B-side, really? But yeah, there we go. But I have a couple of questions to ask you on that. But yeah, I imagine you feel similar about it.
I do. I remember I have like distinct memories when this came out, and I was playing in a band at the time, and very similar kind of Arctic Monkey style, definitely influenced by them. And I remember I was picking up my bassist at the time to take him to band practice, and I played him this song for the first time as well, and got to get his pure reaction for it. And I remember he
Nice.
felt the same way as me, blown away. It's a very at the time this was, and I guess lasting, a unique sound for them. One of
Yeah.
their heaviest, and just it's a special gem. And B-side or not, I mean it exists as it exists, but it's a great song.
So the band, I was going to try and guess what instrument you played, but I was going to go bass player, but as you said, you were picking up your bassist.
Oh,
That's
okay.
obviously not it. So, but I'm going to assume guitar. I don't think you're a drummer.
Yeah, no, I'm not a drummer. So if you listen to our podcast, one of the other hosts on there, Bob, he was the drummer. So we've known each other since high school, and he still drums. He still plays in bands. But I was a guitar player. I started on bass though, so my first instrument that I played was bass. So I moved over.
Right.
Yeah.
And I imagine your band was a lot better than the band that me and Nick were in when we were teenagers.
I don't know. I could sing you some of the instrumental tracks, but yeah.
Did you
it was fun.
Did you ever play a bar in Manchester on a Saturday night that was absolutely full, and by the end of your half-an-hour set, it was absolutely empty? I think that's the barometer that we're operating
I
with.
did not have that experience.
Then you definitely won. But yeah, no, it's a special tune. It's phenomenal, really. I mean, I wouldn't have at the time, and even now, I wouldn't have minded a full album of Fright Lined Dining Room type songs, really. But it's definitely an interesting one. Not a very good song for you. Well, I don't know. It's either a good song or a bad song for you to hear at 5 a.m. I'm not sure. It could go either way on that one. It might bring you to life, or it might make you shrink away.
Got me excited, honestly. In a kind of way, this feels like, I feel like there's definitely some solid reflections from Humbug to Favorite Worst Nightmare, which always gets me excited because Favorite Worst Nightmare is my favorite. But this feels kind of like the reflection of, or the evolution of If You Were There, Beware, which might be why we love it so much. So yeah, it's just kind of got that vibe for me. And it's kind of funny too, because being on a horror podcast, this is, I guess, the closest thing to like a horror sounding song for the era.
Lined, but it's and it's check out Justin's podcast, Straight Chilling Podcast. Horror. You do a different horror film or horror. You got kind of spin-off shows as well, horror genre as well, TV shows as well.
We do
Occasionally,
mini
or-
casts for like Patreon, for the TV
Right.
shows, and like I think we've covered all the Stranger Things seasons. But yeah, you and I
Nice.
talked about the Conversation not too long ago. So,
We
yeah,
did,
that was
and it
fun.
fit in nicely to an episode of this as well. I brought it up recently, I remember, because there was a song, and I remember going, "Oh, this." For some reason, it came up, and I can't remember why. Something to do with spies or 70s spying. I can't remember which song
I
of this
remember
album
that
that was
too.
now, but I can't remember what song of this album that would have been referring
I
to. But
think it was because I remember listening to that episode. It might have been the Secret Door, maybe episode.
mm,
About pulling
yeah,
influence, a
yes,
couple
might have
different
been.
influences from. So,
Okay.
yeah, somewhere around there,
Well,
toward the beginning, I think.
Well, I'd like to get your thoughts a bit later on. Well, obviously, we'll get thoughts on the episode, and I want some kind of thoughts on this album from you so far, and some of the things perhaps that we've said, or and things like that as we've gone on.
Sure.
But first, let's have some information on the track.
The information action ratio. Ain't that the place to go?
Go. I can do it. I can do it.
Nice. Yeah, you're allowed. I'm allowed because Nick's not here to
Yeah,
pull
they're
me
good
out
to
of
stop
it,
us.
Go run wild. But yeah, Fright Lined Dining Room is 3 minutes and 26 seconds long and has only 5.6 million streams on Spotify, which is not a good thing. But I do have.
That sound means it's the end of the round. Time for the bonus question.
Justin, another B-side in this series has been the exact same length as this one at 3 minutes and 26 seconds. Can you guess that B-side?
3
And I'll,
minutes. 20 seconds. It's got to be Catapult then.
You go in with Catapult? Is that you?
Well, okay. Hang on. I jumped the gun in the pre-show, so let me take a second. I would assume so. I haven't got my Strange. It's definitely too short. Sketchhead would be too short. So the only other one would be Red Right Hand. I'll go with Red Right Hand.
No.
Oh no!
Should
I got with Catapult?
It was Catapult, yeah.
Oh no! You threw me off.
Yeah, what if you were right first time is very much the the end of that. But yeah, Catapult is the answer. Yes, yeah, so Catapult is exactly the same length as this one.
That's crazy because they're on the same EP. Like they're like back to back. Or no, does it go Catapult, Sketchhead, and Fright Line? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Catapult, Sketchhead, Fright Line Dining Room, and it's odd. That, it is odd for them to be exactly the same length in terms of it's a strange one. Yeah, that's why it caught my eye. But the song is 130 beats per minute and is in the key of E. The song has never been played live. Why, oh why, oh why has this song never been played live? It is a shock, isn't it? Although this did happen in a soundcheck once. Yeah, so they maybe they considered it, maybe they couldn't get it to work live in the way that, I mean, it is quite a complex, not complex, but I don't know, maybe there's a lot going on, maybe it didn't, because I mean, of all the songs that you would want to play live, surely this would be the one.
Yeah, I would think so. But with that, I have a bonus round. So can you hit the jingle?
I will. Wow, exciting stuff. Yes.
That sound means it's the end of the round. Time for the bonus question.
Okay, so this song has never been played live. There are 3 other Humbug era songs that have also not been played live. Can you name all 3?
I mean, I should be able to because I've probably talked about the information of them not being played live over the past 3 months. Some album as well. Some on the album. Or are they all B-sides?
On this list, so I don't know if this list is including acoustic performances or not. So we'll exclude those. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So actually, on the list, they are all B-sides.
Okay. Well, I know they played Sketchhead live because I remember moaning about it last week, how they played it at Liverpool and Newcastle before they came to Manchester. So I know that. I remember. So I've got to remember the ones that are coming up because probably one of those, almost definitely. I would say, well, obviously, so it's 3 others beside this.
Yes.
Well, I would say almost certainly, I don't think they've played. Don't Forget Whose Legs You're On live.
Correct.
I mean, are they all from that EP? I could see them, all of them. Have they done Join the Dots?
Joining the Dots has been performed live.
Wow.
I actually think I saw that one performed live. I'll have to check the.
Oh, really?
I'll
Yeah,
have to
you
check it.
see, so you Americans get so many better steps than us because they don't have to, they don't not tied to England and the hits. Afternoon's Hat.
Afternoon's Hat. Yep.
And then
And
the
one
third
more.
one, I'm gonna say. See, have they done Catapult? I mean, I literally said this 2 weeks ago. If they didn't, I'm trying to remember. See, it's between I Haven't Got My Strange and Catapult, but I have a weird feeling that they have done I Haven't Got My Strange live, which might be complete nonsense. So I'm gonna say Catapult.
It was I Haven't Got My Strange.
Yeah, if I know, as I said it, I know we had talked about how there was a live clip for Catapult, but it wasn't good enough for us to play on the episode because it was from
that's
the
right.
Mobile
Yeah,
30,009. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wow. So I
So,
mean,
yeah,
this one
those
is
4.
this one is the sort of biggest travesty out of those, I'd say. I mean,
It is,
I was
especially playing Catapult. Like, if you would play Catapult, it seems weird that they would not play this. Yeah.
Yeah, very odd. I mean, I can only assume there's a logistical reason why. But I was going to ask, actually, I was going to put it to you and Nick, but just you now, is this potentially the biggest travesty of their songs that hasn't been played live? Is this the biggest song, the best song that they have that's never been played live? Because, I mean, I know there's some on Tranquility and stuff like that, and probably Nick might say like science fiction or something like that. I don't know if that's been played live, but I think, I mean, the songs that haven't been played live, let's get them up. Because, I mean, I would say of the B-sides, I would say almost definitely this is the biggest travesty that they've ever played live of all the B-sides they have.
And most of them are B-sides. So I have the list here as well, if you'd like me to go down that, because I was pulling from that one. So most of them are B-sides. You have tracks like Chun-Li's Spinning Bird Kick, Baby I'm Yours, Put Your Dukes Up John, which are just covers. The Bad Thing is probably the next biggest one that's an actual album track.
But it's
now
one of the best songs ever written, so we love it.
Yeah, so there is some competition, in my opinion, but at least these have some acoustic versions. Too Much to Ask would be a competitor, and The Bakery would be a potential competitor for me.
Guys, you never done The Bakery? Wow.
Only acoustic. So they've never done Matador, The Death Ramps, I Haven't Got My Strange, Fright Lined Dining Room. I also think Don't Forget Whose Legs You're On could potentially fit in their current era, but it's such a obscure B-side that I doubt they'll. The Afternoon's Hat is a weird one too, that they haven't performed live. Blondo Sonic Shimmer Trap would be cool live. IDST. Electricity, that's a good one.
That's a good one, yeah.
Stop the World, I Want to Get Off With You, 2013.
They've never done that live. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a very
Golden
good
Trunks and The World's First Ever Monster Truck Front Flip and Jet Skis on the Moat.
Oh, I do like Jet Skis on the Moat a lot.
I thought that might be your top competition, Jet Skis on the Moat.
I guess out of the list, though, I do like Blondo Sonic Shimmer Trap a lot. It's got a very cool... always makes me want to kind of be driving down an American sort of dusty roads in a convertible or something. As do all the B-sides in that era, really. But Electricity would be cool. But I guess if you give me that list, Golden Trunks, I like Golden Trunks, but that wouldn't be... I wouldn't be that bothered. I think if you gave me that list and said you can pick one for them to play live, it would probably be this.
I would agree. From a live performance standpoint, all the the sound going on and the excitement, I think, because some of them are good songs, but they just don't have the energy for pick one live performance. So I think I would pick this one.
Especially at the time, this would have gone in great after a bit of a sort of fast run, like, Brian Storm, Teddy Pickson, slipping into this or something. Yeah, very
Red Right Hand of the time was very heavy and of this feeling. It is so strange.
It's strange that they would do Red Right Hand live, a cover over this as
Yeah.
well. I mean, and it's such a good song, and they must know that this is a great song. You don't write this song and record it and listen to it and not know it's a great song. So I can only assume that there is a logistical reason for them not playing it live, like they couldn't get it or something right live. I don't know. Because if you listen to that sound check, I kind of trimmed that sound check, but the first 20 seconds, it doesn't sound right, and then they kind of stopped doing it right. They might have just been messing about though, but I can only assume that's the reason. I don't know why you wouldn't play this live unless it was a bit of a nightmare for Alex to sing and play or something. Or I mean, I don't know why he's singing and playing in this one, to be honest. When I hear it all the time, but who knows? But you'd think they'd be able to pull that together, but I don't know. Maybe one day we'll find out. We'll ask them. But yeah, there you go. Why do you play Fright Lined Dining Room live?
That's the goal for the end. Once you guys finish the car, it's just you guys just have to spam to try to get interviews with them to ask them these obscure questions.
I think look, fucking Alex and Matt, and you can bring Jamie and Nick as well if you want. Why isn't this on the album? Why didn't you play it live? We've just spent 3 years doing every single song in your catalog. The least you can do is come on the podcast and answer some questions from us. Yeah, so it remains a mystery, really, as to why, but it's annoying. But homoford, for a homophody, homiford. So Nick has been shocked and shamed and wrong in this so far a couple of times. Where would you place this? And it's not always straightforward, because I remember we were both shocked that I think it was Catapult or something wasn't Josh Homme.
There was a couple, that were kind of surprising. I haven't got my Strange. I think was a big surprise that I think Ford did that one, but I would be shocked. I would be blown away if this was not Josh Homme, because I will talk about it in some of the breakdown later. This almost like feels like the most deserty Western song to me. I would be so shocked if he didn't do this one. So I would say Homme.
Prepare to be not shocked, because it is Homme. Yeah, you're correct.
Okay.
It is Homme. Yeah, I mean, it would be quite shocking. I mean, I still think even the ones that are Ford, I still feel like they wrote them in the desert in some form or something, and they've kind of just been recorded or something. It doesn't really make sense. Okay, so we've arrived at the part of the show. Well,
you could say they're selling like ghost cookies.
Now, Justin, you may remember a few weeks ago, I shocked Nick by changing the format of this slightly away from record sales over to placement, because we were kind of shocked to find out that I think Cornerstone went in at like 92 in the charts, and then Sketchhead went in at 80, and then Catapult went in at 35.
Yeah, that was shocking.
Well, this also charted, Fright Lined Dining Room, in the UK. What number in the chart do you think Fright Lined Dining Room charted at? So Catapult 35, Sketchhead 80.
Yeah, I naturally want to put it somewhere in the middle, just because of like how I would kind of perceive those songs, even though I like this more than Catapult, but I don't know. People do have a weird love for Sketchhead. I mean, it's like not to knock the song or anything, but it just I'm gonna sandwich it in the middle. I'll say 65.
No, it is 29. This chart is higher than
that's
both.
good to hear. Okay,
yeah,
that's a
so
pleasant surprise.
Much higher. I mean, this is a mystery, really. The only logical conclusion that I think I can come to is that when this came out they released it as a vinyl that was only in Oxfam, which is a charity shop here, or thrift shop, and it's, I think, potentially because of that, maybe they charted, and maybe streaming figures have started to seep in a bit at this part, although I don't think so. Although iTunes, perhaps, the iTunes chart, and people, I think the reason why it's charted higher than Cornerstone is people have gone on the iTunes and they bought the tracks individually, and they're not buying Cornerstone because they've already heard Cornerstone because it's on the album. This is the third track, so they're buying the B-sides, and obviously more people bought. I mean, if you, I mean, it was like 79p, but say you were like Nick and you were reluctant to spend money, and you're looking at it and you go, I can only buy one of these or two of these tracks, you'd probably be drawn to Sketchhead and Fright Lined Dining Room. Oh, not Sketchhead, sorry. You'd be to Fright Lined Dining Room and Catapult, perhaps, as titles to go for, maybe.
When they're longer, even if you're just looking at the length.
I mean, if you're just seeing Fright Lined Dining Room as well, you'd go, "Oh, that sounds like an interesting title. Let's see what that song's about." Yeah, so interesting, but yeah, 29, which is great. So it was probably one of the highest charting positions they have until AM, probably, because I know it doesn't. I mean, we'll find out, but the singles didn't do as well after Favorite Worst Nightmare as they did. But so we haven't got any information on the gear this week because it's quite dry out there for the B-sides. Although, having said that, I do think it's always worth hearing the jingle.
Technological advances really blooming get me in the mood.
We're going rogue, Nick. There's nothing you can do about it. And there's nothing you can do about it. Mic drop, as we were talking about in the chat before. But that brings me to the reviews part of the show. So this week the it kind of goes to Far Out magazine. One of our favorites, Far Out magazine, as the Arctic Monkeys lovers, it seems. Far Out magazine. I have to tell you this, by the way, because it just popped into my head before I do it. I sent Nick a message last night because now I love Arctic Monkeys. We all love Arctic Monkeys. I saw an NME post from 2012 last night that said 50 greatest rock riffs of all time. So this was 2012, 4 a.m. and things. 50 greatest rock riffs of all time. Ever. Number 2 in that list was Brian Storm. And I thought, NME, get your tongue out of Alex Turner's arse, because I love this band, but it would be outrageous for me to say that Brian Storm, I mean, if it was post AM and you said, "Are you minus something?" it would have a shout. It would still be ridiculous to say best rock riff of all time. But to say that the Brian Storm riff, as good a riff it is the second best rock riff of all time, is absolutely disgraceful comment, even as a fan.
I don't think it would make top 10 Arctic Monkeys rock riffs. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Would it even be, second on that list? Yeah. But maybe at that point, perhaps. But certainly not maybe after. But I mean... even the diehards that listen to this podcast, the people who are really on the top tier in a circle of Arctic Monkeys fans, I would imagine, would not be as crazy to say that Brian Storm is the second best rock riff of all time. No, I can't even remember what they had at number 1. It was probably something outrageous. In fact, I think it was such a leap. Actually, number 1 was like a sort of sensible, actual one, and then the number 2 was Brian Storm, and it made absolutely no sense as a leap. I can't remember now, but yeah. There we go. Very odd. Very odd. But we're over to Far Out magazine, who love Arctic Monkeys just as much as NME, but are perhaps more sensible, because NME seem to have a weird obsession with Arctic Monkeys. But they did a list of the 10 heaviest Arctic Monkeys songs over at Far Out, and they put in there Fright Lined Dining Room. And they said one of the more lesser-known cuts on this list that shouldn't diminish the brilliance of Fright Lined Dining Room, the B-side to the Sing Your Heart Out anthem of Cornerstone. It starts with a very Arctic Monkeys rhythm, with bassist Nick O'Malley providing one of his typical bouncy bass lines, similar to Brian Storm, providing a stylistic bridge between Favourite Worst Nightmare and Humbug, something I'm sure we'll touch upon. The song trudges along, and for the duration, you're wondering where it's going as Turner delivers a catchy chorus. Then around the 2-minute mark, this incredible dark riff faves in, and I kid you not when I say that you could hear this on a Swans record. Not sure who that is, but I'd quite like to check them out if that's the case.
Yeah, I'm going to make a note too. The Swans.
Nick probably knows. But you're surprised at just how heavy the band are able to make it, and are equally as miffed that they didn't extend it for another 30 seconds. So that's the best. And they placed that on the list. Well.
That sound means it's the end of the round. Time for the bonus question.
So, with this song being on that list, I was wondering if you'd like to have a wonder, perhaps, at who else, which other songs appear on that list. of the 10.
Yeah, can you tell me where this one was placed? Because I would have. Did they rank them like list them like the heaviest tracks, or are they just randomly assorted?
Yeah, I think it's in an order, but I'm not sure. I don't know if they assign a number to it or they just do it in an order, which kind of implies that there is an order and there isn't an order. But if there was an order, it would be at number 8.
Oh, okay.
So
I would
put
like
it
if
there
I
was an
had
order.
if I had to rank like heaviest
It goes
songs,
down,
this one
so-
would definitely be toward the top.
But I don't think this is in any order based off it. To be honest, I think they've just gone with 10 heavy tracks in the article, and that's about it. But
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, so let's say the first one they've gone for in the list is a song from the first album.
So perhaps Vampires would be my guess.
It's not. It's View from the Afternoon. Is the song they've
Really?
gone for.
Okay.
So yeah, View from the Afternoon was on there. The second song that they list in this is a cover from this era, which kind of pretty much gives it away. Just to give you too much
Yeah,
information.
that would be Red Right Hand.
Red Right Hand.
call.
Yeah, good call. Yeah. Although is it right to class a cover as the top 10 heaviest songs? But then they did make it their own a lot, didn't they?
I would say because the music is distinct and that's what's going to be heavy about it, then I think that would be fair because the music is very much them from their perspective. So yeah, I think that's fair enough.
Did you enjoy the Snoop Dogg version of that song?
Cracked me up pretty good. I never heard that before. There's gotta be a ton of renditions of that song because it's so slow and like so
it's madness, isn't it?
Snoop Dogg was not one I anticipated.
no, crazy. I mean, that same. I had two mind blows away because that same week, I think it was the next day. Me and my girlfriend have been watching Monk on because they put it on Netflix, that sort of detective show. And there was an episode with Snoop Dogg in that playing a rapper in it who wasn't Snoop Dogg, and I was like, this is insane. But Snoop Dogg will officially do anything for money. So the next song on this list after they did Fright Lined Dining Room, and then they've got another song from this era. Or this album. That's the album specifically.
Era. Okay. Then I would say Pretty Visitors.
Correct. And there's a correct answer there. The next one is off Suck It and See. Of which you only really have two to pick from.
Yeah, Suck It and See some. Well, then I guess they would probably pick Library Pictures.
No, they went with Don't Sit Down because I Move Your Chair.
Really? Okay.
I can't speak for whether Library Pictures comes up again, but for that one, they picked Don't Sit Down. This next one is an interesting take, and I'll be here to hear you. Considering this is the top 10 heaviest,
yeah,
I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this. This is a B-side from Suck It and See.
Okay. Well, Evil Twin?
No.
Or Blondo Sonic?
Yes, Blondo Sonic Shimmer
Blondo
Trap,
Sonic? It's not that heavy.
Not really. It's got some sort of cool sort of.
I think Evil Twin's kind of heavier, honestly.
Well, Evil Twin may pop up again, but I wouldn't even put. But they've only got 10 songs.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have put Blondo Sonic on the 10. I don't think, and we can discuss afterwards what we feel they've missed. But Blondo Sonic it's got a desert rock type effect on the guitar, but not in a heavy way.
Yeah, I think you need more elements than just the guitar. Like think about the drum. That's why I was picking like Library Pictures, a little bit. Yeah. So
the bass tends to be more pulsating on the heavier ones as well, more like distorted bass and stuff. So yeah, that is an odd take.
That's a weird one.
So strange. I mean, what they said was this is a more stoner rock goodness. I mean, by definition, they've taken it out of their own. They do this all the time on Far Out. We always say it like they set their own criteria and then fail to meet it. I don't understand.
Yes.
The next one, again, odd choice for me. Off Suck It and See.
Oh, Office. Oh, is it just based on your reaction? Is it All My Own Stunts?
No, but that would actually be a better one in a way. This is Brick by Brick, which I mean, that is like stoner rock kind of always reminds me
I don't
like
think
California beach
heavy.
rock or something. It's not heavy.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
kind of surf rocky-ish. Yeah, not
Yeah.
heavy. No,
Not heavy at all. I think they've messed up the criteria. And then, I mean, there's only a couple left, and there's definitely some that I would put in place of it.
yeah.
And they've only really stuck to 2 eras here. When was this article from? The next one is another B-side from Suck It and See. Really?
Okay, then I gotta go Evil Twin then again.
No, it's IDST, which I guess I can give them. The weird thing is,
yeah.
the weird thing is, this article's from 2022, so
Weird choices.
Weird choices, yeah. This person clearly loves Suck It and See, which I'm all for. But it would be outrageous if I was going to do an article based around Suck It and See. It wouldn't be the heaviest; it would be the most melodic Arctic Monkey songs. The sort of most Pixies-esque bass lines or something. It wouldn't be. So the next one is another Suck It and See B-side.
All right, it's got to be Evil Twin at this point.
There is. They finally done Evil Twin.
It's like you can...
Okay, and here's the last one in the list. It's another Suck It and See B-side, which is a cover.
A cover,
Sorry. What am I talking about? It's not a cover.
A feature.
It's a feature. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, You and I.
Yeah.
If they picked a little, okay, I was about to say if they picked a Little Illusion Machine for heavy over You and I, okay, You and I, yeah.
I mean, this list. I mean, does it? I mean, it just has the 10 heaviest songs by Arctic Monkeys. Okay, so I mean, let's say. I mean, you said Vampires is probably the only one from the first era, really. Although Still Take You Home could have something to say about that. Brian Storm might have got a shout in there when she was doing this list.
Yeah.
If you were there,
yeah. What if you were right first time?
What I mean, certainly. What if you were right first time is probably, as I say, the bit when it kicks in. I still think is their most rock anthem sound they've done. When you listen to it in headphones, you're like, wow, this feels like really big. And then Humbug. I mean, she's missed off. She did Pretty Visitors, to be fair. I guess I can't argue with any others on this album.
Dangerous Animals would be, or would be the closest because it does have that bass and drum combination, but it is more. But see, I would
Stoner again, isn't it? Slow and
it is.
Yeah.
I would see if you're gonna put Blondo Sonic in, then you would have to consider something like Dangerous Animals. I kind of lump those two together. Yeah,
absolutely. I don't think there's any other. I mean. In a way, it's not, but in a way, you know, even Sketchhead would have a shout over some of the ones they picked anyway, because it has that kind of like It's more dirty, I think, than heavy, but I mean, Suck It and See again. They've gone for all the songs Suck It and See, so there's definitely no more, but not library pictures, which is odd.
That's super weird, especially with all the B-sides that they included.
I mean, I can only imagine if Nick was here, he'd be having a nervous breakdown in that list, but. And then AM. I mean, it was post AM.
No electricity. Yeah.
Oh, no electricity.
Electricity's pretty heavy.
No. Are You Mine? On the list. I mean,
I Want It All is kind of heavy.
Yeah. And then that's probably it. I mean, Do I Want to Know is heavy, but not fast. It's the guitar is very heavy, but not in the same way.
Yeah.
More so than Blonde Sonic, though, probably. But even Tranquility, I mean, you could say she looks like fun if you wanted to. Compared to some of them anyway that they've picked.
Some, yeah.
I think she loves Suck It and See, like I do, but she's made the wrong article based off Suck It and See. That's what she's done there, I think. But good on her to get Fright Lined Dining Room in there, because that would have been ridiculous if she didn't. Yeah. Okay, and other review is Ever Faithful Enemy's Greatest List. This is a travesty, by the way. They've got this song at number 98. And remember, this list was pre-Tranquility and no, not pre-Tranquility. This list was pre the car. I think it does include Tranquility, so it only has like 120 tracks in it because they don't have the covers in there. So they put this at 98. And I say this on the podcast a lot, that when we come to do our lists, I might find because of the greatness of the band that I have to push stuff back. But this one would never be that far back.
Not that low, no.
No, I can think of 20 songs probably straight away that I say that with confidence and then immediately start to panic over it.
I mean, I would put this, even if you just went down and you said, this is my opinion, but even if you went down and said, let's pick some album tracks, they're just kind of like medium, you know, your D is for Dangerous, Your red light indicates doors are secure. Just picking a couple. I would put this above a decent amount of those medium kind of tracks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would actually. Yeah, I would, and it's someone I want to discuss now when we jump into it. But this, I would put this higher than some album tracks. Quite a few album tracks that they have probably.
Yeah, even in this era. Yeah.
Almost certainly. Yeah. But they're what's even worse is their explanation, which is its quietly cunning lyrical content is overall burdened by a hopscotching rhythm section. Burdened by the rhythm section. That is an insane comment.
Basis
bearing in mind, this is a publication that said that Brainstorm is the second greatest rock riff of all time, and then people wonder why Enemy isn't a magazine anymore and it's just online.
Especially too with because the benchmark was Fire and the Thud, which was in the 80s, right? Wasn't that like
oh god. You reminded me of that. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, it was like, I think it was 82 or something. And I said, if anything goes lower than this, then that's awful.
Yeah.
I mean, this is by far a superior song to Fire in the Flood. I think we pretty much cleared. I was going to ask you later on, but I guess we pretty much cleared up what we both think about. Would you put this on the album over Fire in the Flood if you were doing the album? I would take off.
I always do. I have that tendency to like make my own Arctic Monkeys albums. They have so many B-sides. It lends itself to it, especially with Spotify playlists and stuff now. But yeah, I've never made a humbug-esque style playlist album that this wasn't on there, especially over Fire in the Thud.
I mean, I was wondering actually because because we had you on, because when we didn't really get a gauge from anyone, but nobody came out against us, which was a good sign, I guess. When we sort of, I was thinking that when we kind of came out quite strongly against Fire, not to this extent of like the bad thing, but came out against it as a track a bit. I thought we might get a lot of backlash from people that go, no, it's a great song and that, but we didn't really. I was going to ask you what your kind of thoughts on that song is.
I honestly, this kind of goes into the album as a whole, but for an album at this point that came out and you had 12 tracks before with a ton of B-sides, you had 13 tracks before an EP, a single, and a bunch of B-sides. When you drop a 10-track album with this type of anticipation, there's always going to be a little bit of like maybe a little initial disappointment. I think I initially was like, oh man, only 10 tracks. And for one of them, they need to carry more weight at that point. If you're only going to have a 10-track album, each one has to hit. And of this whole era, there's I think like 18 songs with Red Right Hand included as a cover. So 17 originals. And even amongst the melodic ones, I honestly too I think Joining the Dots is a much more better melodic, deserty sounding song that fits this era a lot better than Fire in the Thud does. I think I would put every song from this era above Fire in the Thud, honestly.
It's an odd one because, as we said on the episode, Josh Homme, whatever it is, said that was his favorite song on the album, which I found crazy.
Yeah,
he's produced so many good songs on this album that I thought that it kind of made me feel like maybe this was a song that got on there due to the experience of making it, because clearly they had an experience making it because the band love it and he loves it. So I can only assume it's kind of personal in a way, in terms of like, kind of like a joke. You had to be there, maybe. But and obviously it's got a guest on it. It's got Alison Mosshart on it. So perhaps that fed into it. I don't know. But I mean, I don't understand how you could write a song like Fright Lined Dining Room and not put it on an album. I mean, it is so good.
Hey Dan, do you like listening to popular songs with questionable lyrics?
You know I bloody do. And Nick, do you like drinking copious amounts of alcohol?
Nah, do I ever. Actually a worry.
Well, if you're the same as us, then come listen to a weekly podcast, Liquor and Lyrics, where we take apart popular music's worst songwriting whilst drinking our favourite drinks, which kind of stay in theme with the song.
From Gin and Tonic to Grease Lightning.
Cosmopolitans with Chaz and Dave.
Blue Lagoons with Busted.
Sex on the Beach with Sex on Fire.
Shirley Temples with Shaggy.
And even a shandy with Sharon.
Dropping on Tuesday the 19th of September and every Tuesday after on your favourite podcast platform.
I also too, and I wonder and this is why I love like listening to the show and hearing some of the breakdown, is because we see it from a certain perspective. We get these songs released and we're thinking about how they kind of like sonically fit together. But then when you are breaking down like certain songs like Secret Door, Fire in the Thud, and like what they could mean and how they could be attached to Alex in some way, and the perception of putting those together from a thematic standpoint of what they mean could be the key that we just don't have the insight to.
And I was particularly proud of my kind of sort of figuring out Secret Door, as opposed to quite a good one, point. But even musically, I mean, I think me and Nick both sort of said on the Dance Little Liar episode that this is the song that Fire in the Flood wants to be, and this is so superior. It's got a similar kind of thing going on in it, and it's weird, but I think it probably is in the same way that Alex pushed to get the bad thing on Favorite Worst Nightmare, when in my opinion, I know it's your favorite album, I don't know how you feel about us saying that we would put What If You Were Right First Time in its place. I
completely agree. I would put Too Much to Ask about on there too. Probably maybe The Bakery. The Bakery's got a different sound, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but I don't go on too much, because what we've learned doing our pre-show album reviews, where we get a random album, we review it, and typically what we get a lot on albums is that I'll be listening to it and we'll get about, say it's 12 tracks. Most albums that are good have about 6-7 tracks that are okay, and then you tend to get this last 5-6 songs which are just a bit like they've done the too many. That happens a lot, we've found. So I guess I don't harp on too much, because I'm just grateful that we have a band that consistently put out like pretty good records, and there's not many. I don't personally, I think I said it, Fire in the Flood is my last complaint now. I say that now, but it's my last complaint at the albums. I wouldn't change anything on any of the rest of the albums until maybe The Car, but then there's no other songs for me to compare it to as a B-side. So, but I have no issues with any album tracks coming up at all. I think Fire in the Flood is my last sort of like, ugh. And I know people will be going, brick by brick, but I have a special love for Brick by Brick. But
to be honest, it's hard to, because as you said, it's a weird perspective as a fan to have so many quality B-sides from a band to think, why isn't this released in some capacity? Or even in this aspect, you could say something like, there's 18 songs, one's a cover, but you release 10. If you wrote 3 more songs, you literally could have a double album, because you would have enough good songs to have 2 albums where, I would listen to an album that kicked off with Fright Lined Dining Room and then went into Catapult. And then, so I think they're in a unique position in that way. But I'm a little bit different with you guys in the perception of, I coming up with Suck It and See a little bit with AM too. I know you guys on like one of the recent episodes were saying like AM's a perfect album. I think Domino has done an amazing job with what they've allowed them to do, but I do think that there is a little bit a history of the Arctic Monkeys where it's interesting to see them here with Josh Homme and some guidance a little bit, but I think that they could maybe use with like a No Man. I think they could, like, an editor might be helpful in some ways. I won't go too much into that. I just like
no. It's interesting. Do you mean in terms of song length or album length or
a couple things like
on there?
song like arrangements. I'm not as hot on the way that Humbug flows, and especially with some of the songs that are left off of it. I'm very much not a big fan of the way that Suck It and See flows with the way that
this has been Don't Believe the Hype. We'll see you next week.
I sometimes it feels I don't know, it doesn't feel, I don't know, like I don't want to talk about Second and See too much, but it just like Cornerstone feels really weird to me, placed right before Dance Little Liar, Pretty Visitors, and The Jeweler's Hands. That it just doesn't really make sense to me, to the point where when I typically put together my Humbug playlist, I like to put Cornerstone with the Second and See songs because it just kind of like fits much better for me there. And I'll like put in Joining the Dots or, you know, something like that. So I don't know. I think they could use with maybe an editor sometimes, or a different perspective.
I guess it's. I mean, you could. I mean, look, we're obviously doing Arctic Monkeys podcast. I mean, it probably goes for most bands, really, doesn't it? In that
absolutely.
It's personal, isn't it? It's like. I mean, it's the kind of the industry where they don't have that, because most bands that are successful have a free reign because you don't want to get involved in the art. Whereas if you're a screenwriter or a novelist, then you have a script editor or you have a book writer who comes in and goes. Because sometimes you can't see it. I've had a similar experience recently. Where somebody kind of said something about script and I, that doesn't really need to be there, but it's, you know what I found, it's usually the bit that you, and maybe this explains it, and it's something they say a lot when you're writing scripts, is that the scene that you love the most is usually the one that has to go, and you can't see it because you love it so much, but it's actually the most unnecessary scene, and perhaps you could transport that into an album perspective, and that's why we see songs like The Bad Thing and Fire in the Flood being on there, and Cornerstone, because they love the songs and the experience of making it. So it's the last song they're going to take off, but maybe it's the song that they should take off. So it's interesting. But I mean, look, with Suck It and See, I mean, that I always admit that is, when I tell people that my favorite album is Suck It and See, they're always like, A, they go, "Oh, you're a true fan then," and B, they go, "Really?" And I go, "It's personal." I mean,
absolutely.
I love melodic songs for a start. I will pinpoint on if there's a melodic song on an album, it's always the song, no matter what the band, that I will like the most, just naturally. And I always had a sort of draw to Alex's. I remember Only Ones Who Know was like my favorite song of Favourite Nightmare for ages, which is mad. But I just something about the way he sings melodic songs, really, like. Yeah, I love, as I'm sure everyone does, but with Suck It and See is very personal in that regard, in terms of, and it's all timing in your life and things and what you bring to the art, isn't it? It's very strange. I mean, I think I said it when we get to Tranquility, there's so much personal stuff in there that isn't actually in there. Probably,
it's all attached to you.
Yeah, which is cool, but which you don't get with a lot of artists personally, which is why I love them so much. But it's I know what you mean. They, you know. And plus, because James Ford does every album, I said this, I would have loved to have seen I said this after, if they were going to do AM2, which in hindsight, you know, might not necessarily been a good idea, but if they were going to do something like that, it would have been cool, maybe, as much as I love James Ford, to see like see them work with a Mark Ronson or somebody like that, and just see what he can bring out of them. It would be cool.
Yeah.
I love James Ford, but it would be cool to see them work with a different producer and see what the effects are of that. I think as well, in a different perspective, because he's obviously very similar to them in thought processes and things like that. Yeah,
I think it's push and pull, because then you get a lot more freedom, a lot more of just like the pure artistry of it. But at the same time, sometimes you're not having somebody challenge you in any kind of new ways or question. Maybe you're such good friends. They've literally been friends since the first album and collaborated together as musicians, that you're not really getting any kind of, you know, push from them. You know, they're kind of it's business as usual, what you've been doing for the past 20 years. So I think it could benefit them in some ways.
And I guess from the sort of the AM Perfect Album perspective, I guess that comes from, I mean, it's interesting with that, because I kind of got to a point of it where I was like, AM, like you do when you're a true fan, and it's like the big album, you're like, oh god. And now as we get close to doing it, I'm really excited about doing it, because I'm like, oh, that was when I think back, that was actually a really special time in my life when that came out. Like, it was just so big, it was great, and it was almost like everyone that had abandoned them after Humbug came crawling back, and I was like, it was great just from that point of view. But I think what I mean with Perfect Album is that even though I struggle to find a fault in it, is what I mean. If I sit down and listen to it and go, oh, I'm not sure about that bit or something, I struggled in the individual songs rather than perhaps running order or something. I can't find many faults. I think the only fault Nick had was I Want It All, but I personally love that song. So when I listen to the album, I can't ever go, oh, I'm not sure about that, or I'm not sure about that. I just think every track is pretty spot on. I don't know what they could have done to make it better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think
Except
the
that
thing is,
I want to be yours. I would have longer. Is the only thing I would do. A bigger end.
yeah, I do agree with that. I like that. I think they have this tendency for, especially, I don't know, and this is coming from the perspective too, which is it is very interesting to hear you guys talk about the disc kind of like for favorite worst nightmare, because to me, one of the things I like so much about it is it feels like this very seamless kind of blend where the first half of the album has this like ode to what came before, and it blends into this darker mode, and it like flows very well generally. Bad Things garbage and its placement is terrible. But it feels like with a couple albums, Suck It and See and AM in particular, the songs, the thing is like people think I like knock the songs. It has nothing to do with the songs. It feels like there's this big brick that sits in the middle of these albums that ultimately like kind of hurts the flow. You like start off like really strong and you have this kind of like vibe going, and you like end with this very specific vibe, and then you have these other songs that like as individual songs are very strong and good. They just sit like this weird brick in the middle of an album. Like with Suck It and See, the problems I have with Suck It and See is I want more justice almost for the melodic songs. It's weird for me to go from like Hellcat and then I want to go into something like Reckless Serenade, and then to go Don't Sit Down, Library Pictures, All My Own Stunts, which sometimes feel like humbug B-sides in some capacity.
Yeah. I know what you mean. If there was one change I would make, so I can say I would have had three, not even the B-sides that exist, just three new melodic songs of the same quality instead of perhaps Spit by Rick, Don't Sit Down, and Library Pictures. I would have liked just another three. I mean, it's easy for me to say, isn't it? Fucking just write me another three, Suck It and See, and Hellcat. Yeah, just write me another three of those, please. But yeah, it's definitely funny. And by the way, on the Favorite Worst Nightmare thing, my stance on it is that it's kind of my least favorite going there by proxy. And the car, it's not my least favorite. The car is probably at the minute, but that could change by proxy because it's like the best, my least favorite of a great bunch. And I guess I will say, Nick made a comment on this podcast a couple of weeks ago that I kind of didn't hear properly on the episode, and then I listened back. So I would like to separate myself from this comment because I thought it was quite strong from him. He said he thinks that if the band could go and record Favorite Worst Nightmare again, they'd do it very differently because they rushed it. I am absolving myself from any connection to that particular comment because that is a bold statement to make. So to make that clear, but I know what he was trying to say. But it's an interesting one. I think you know what, I think Brainstorm it's a cultural thing here where it feels very much of a time, and it feels like you almost resent it a bit because the people that really annoy us that turn up to these gigs and moan about them now, they just call for like Teddy Picker and Brian stuff. Sure. So we may be unfairly putting, when we hear them live, we love it, but we're unfairly judging it because of these people that annoy us at the gigs. So as you have obviously a completely different experience and from that, so that might be it. And I'd love to be in an American gig where they can just be more free and play other stuff. But yeah.
Well, even with that,
did they come to Korea?
I don't think they, as far as I know, I would like, because they definitely have been to Japan, which is just about an hour and a half away. But I mean, even looking at that as my favorite album, I still would say, why is the bad thing there? Or, so it's even then, I think there's a benefit to have somebody saying like, maybe we shouldn't.
The worst thing about the bad thing is that 3 of the band members did say Alex.
Yeah, I know
that should be on there. They didn't reveal which song that they were going to put on there, but I'm willing to bet, seeing as though Jamie said "What If You're Right First Time" was one of his favorite songs, that was the one. And the fact that Alex won that argument is bizarre. So yeah, that was obviously very strange and personal, and odd for Alex to push for that one as well, because it was a very personal thing he was writing about in his own life, which he didn't normally do a lot of. So yeah. But yes, we should get on to discussing the Fright Lined Dining Room. Which it's just great. Maybe we should get you back on for a wrap up and have more of these discussions as well, a bonus episode.
Yeah, sure.
But So maybe Nick will turn up that time. Maybe he won't. We'll find out, I guess. We'll find out if people will start to think that you aren't real and it is just Nick.
It's just Nick. Yeah,
Sort of one of those.
He's trying out this bit.
Green screen suits for the camera.
Yeah.
No, because
it's a new AI.
You've made too much coherent sentences together to be Nick in disguise, unless that's part of his gambit. I would, this song I think musically is up there with anything they've done as an arrangement, even or just a structure. I mean, maybe one of the best arrangements when you actually think about it as a song. It's a surreal arrangement, but it works really well, and I think it strays away from song structures that they tend to have fully, because I think they tend to have a pretty set formula in songs most of the time, whether it be on AM or Favorite Worst Nightmare. It's usually verse chorus, so opening riff, verse chorus, breakdown, outro, and that's usually the formula of the song. Whereas this kind of has these weird intricate breakdowns and things like that. It's got a weird flow to it. Really.
There was an old article that you guys had referenced where somebody had mentioned the lack of traditional choruses, though, and that is something that stuck out to me in this one, where I was like, there actually isn't. It's one of those things where in your mind there is a chorus, kind of the flow of the song or the musical aspect that you would call the chorus, but from like a lyrical standpoint, like a hook standpoint, there really is not like a traditional chorus here.
No, I think what we were referencing was when Tranquility came out. Noel Gallagher said in an interview, someone said, "Have you listened to the album?" He said, "It needs more choruses." So there you go.
There you go.
Noel Gallagher hasn't liked any other band since Oasis. So, I mean, what I really love about the opening of this, the drums, is I love the sound of the drums in the opening of this, like the production of it, which is the snare, which is what led me towards Hom definitely for production as well, because as good a job as Ford does, Hommy's gonna have, fucking maybe Taylor Hawkins was popping in, maybe Dave Grohl, I don't know, but the production sound on that snare is incredible. That sort of crisp, like. It's such a cool way to start a song, really.
It is, and I was gonna have a hot take. Maybe we should save it for the end of that.
Up to you. The hot take jingle is available whenever it is required.
Well, play the jingle.
Oh, okay. Wow, exciting stuff.
She flicks a red hot revelation off the tip of her toe.
So just because you mentioned the snare and the way it's like a great way to start and the sound of it. So at the beginning of the series, I had sent in an email talking about what Nick had said about My Propeller. I was really shocked that he was so in love with it for so long and had it so high on his list. So this isn't like a firm, but I would say hot take. I think that this track has the best potential of all of the Humbug era tracks to replace My Propeller as the opening track. So as I was saying, like, oh, I'm surprised. Like I like Propeller. I think it's a like kind of like solid track, but I think I always thought as an opening track and definitely as a single, it was a little underwhelming for what they had set up for everything previously. And I thought if anything was going to replace My Propeller, this snare, the way what you were just saying, the way it starts would have the best potential, I think, and it would almost be kind of like a Brian Storm S track that would make people go like, what is this new monkey sound? This is like completely different.
Yes, this I agree. If I was going to use that, it would be this. I mean, can you imagine if this was on the album and it was the opening track? People would have been like, oh. But I think potentially would have gone with it more in a way. Don't you think? Because although it's lyrically abstract, I think it's got a very you can't help but embrace it. I think as a sound, can you? It's just so cool and catchy and rocky and different. I think people would have been less put off because of when people first heard My Propeller, it was kind of like, oh my god, what's what's going on here? So yeah, interesting. I think it definitely would have, especially with that guitar riff next coming in as well after the drums. That guitar riff sounds like nothing they've done before this.
Yeah,
well.
it does. And it has little hints of the dark carnival type of sound.
Yes.
Definitely more sinister though, whereas in Favorite Worst Nightmare it had more of the playful tone. But we have seen some kind of similar things in like Catapult. But I think this is definitely one of the best representations of the more sinister carnival like sound, I think, from this guitar. I love the guitar tone as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because we were covering it comes up a lot in Shadow Puppets because this album, straight after Shadow Puppets, that kind of carnival and astounding the subscriber content, subscribe, and not you, just the audience generally. But we did 2 Hearts in 2 Weeks last night, the Shadow Puppets B-side, and that had that kind of sinister carnival-esque thing as well. And it does feel like some of this guitar at the start of this does feel a bit Shadows puppety. Some of the stuff Miles does with that delay and reverb on there, and the sort of ringing, beautiful sound to it is a bit Shadow Puppetsy. So that maybe that's the influence coming through as well, because it seems like from what Alex said in the John Kennedy that all of these songs, apart from like musically having changes, certainly lyrically, were all written pre-Desert, apart from the end of Jules' Hands, and they had some kind of form of demos of all of them. So, I mean, God, I'd love to hear a demo of this before they went to the desert to see if it was much different. But because I'm willing to bet it was potentially a bit different. Having said that, Terror Pocket and things like that, the songs that Never Unearthed, were in a similar vein to this in a way. They're probably quite close from that era. So, yeah, it's just to know the kind of order and what influenced what.
Where it kind of came from. It has hints of that, but I love it is different though, because we do have some of the kind of like unique guitar sounds here. So we get this little intro, but like throughout the song we have these kind of like shrieking guitars almost, and it's fun that it's called Fright Lined Dining Room, because I think the music supports the theme maybe more than the kind of idea of the lyrics or what they mean, which we'll get into later. But I love the shrieking guitars, and just with this opening lick, I think those add more to the just sinister vibe of this song. And it's not a lot that they have some hints of it, but I think this is like maybe the peak of this kind of sound.
Yeah, and it's like just sort of the Jamie Cook specials, but in a different way. And I think we said it the other week, the sort of a haunting, ethereal type sound to it as well, which is different. And that guitar is very much, you're quite right, like that. And it's, not only that, but you've got these. I listen to it just instrumentally, and you hear a lot of stuff that you don't always, hear. And there's this kind of sound again that's in a couple of them in the background that sounds like, if you were in a kind of old abandoned factory, and in the background you might hear the sound of like metal hitting something, or like someone hitting metal with a hammer or something. There's this weird sound in the background. I'm like, what were they doing with that? How did they get that sound?
Even so it's interesting, like even the hits to the percussion hits that they have coming in to these. So another thing, one of the reasons I said Home too was the way that it sounds reminds me of like Western style Spurs. So you said like
yeah.
kind of metally sound, but just the kind of reverb they have on it too has this kind of like steady like clink to it. And so
Yes.
this sounds the most Western to me. The bass supports that in its kind of tone too, but those percussion hits and some of those sounds that you're mentioning like always made me feel like more deserty.
Yeah, there's definitely so sorry when my football team is called Spurs. So whenever you whenever I hear that, you trigger me into disappointment and sadness. But yeah, words said. But yeah, no, definitely, it does sound like that. It's got that. Yeah, I think there was another song on this era album where I was saying there's almost like this kind of mechanical feel to some of the stuff. It's very, which I feel like is a very. I can imagine Josh Homme getting quite into that, and Alan Johannes being quite into that, like, oh yeah, we can make this sound like this. It's just this sort of industrial sound almost to some of it, like in the way it was done, which again goes deserty and Spurs and perhaps the kind of you can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine Jamie wearing Spurs when he went off and vanished and came back with the pink dust on the solution to what song was it? He came back. Was it Secret Door? He came back
crying lightning. And he made the crying lightning sound. Yeah,
he made it work. Yeah, which is what a hero. And even the bass, like again, we say it every week now, but Mr. O'Malley's smashing the B-sides. I mean, take a bow. I mean, it is pounding. It is a pounding bass line. Different, but so good. As well,
that might be one of the biggest tragedies I've come away with the Humbug coverage is that some of Nick's absolute best stuff was just left off of the album. We need like a justice for Nick O'Malley here because I mean Catapult.
But he didn't get a vote because he was new.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean this is another one. They're working so well together, and there's something about the tone that I again kind of sounds Western. It's got this kind of saunter to it. And also to the breakdown too, where I think it just goes to the bass that
yes.
I made this little note that this breakdown is so exciting, and it's one of the few Monkees moments where you just have to get that stank face on, where you have to like bob your head and be like, this is nasty. Like this is just getting me so pumped. I'm so ready for this to drop.
Yeah, I think it probably is one of the most Ice Monkeys moments, this with the and then the kind of the build back in. That I would say it was always one like that when it came out. I think I would constantly play it in my car on full, and that bit would be the kind of the highlight. And that I think it might be one of their most moments of that, to be honest, which is crazy. But just in that particular way of that kind of guitar and just waiting for it to come back in with that kind of, because although they're a rock band, you know, there aren't as many songs like this. I think this falls into a kind of separate category of their rock songs in the style that I would put perhaps Are You Mine in as well. But because I mean, I was we were kind of putting a playlist together for sort of exercising of their fast songs, and I was kind of past Fate Worst Nightmare. I was kind of like, there isn't that many all out fast tracks, because even when you do fast ones like On AM, you know, they're not fast songs. They kind of tone the speed down after the second album and don't really. So it's good to have one like this that does have that parts in it where they really let loose and go fast. But it's interesting because you would think of them as a fast band if you think about them, but actually, for years they haven't been necessarily a super fast rock band. Because Humbug is a rock album, but it's not by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, a fast album.
Well, and I think too, it lives in people's minds that Humbug is a much darker, heavier album, but really it's really not. Like if this were on it would definitely justify that feeling more. So it's interesting. So Josh Homme did an interview where he was talking about this album, and he was specifically talking about the idea of these songs being heavy, and some of the songs that made the album, some of the songs that didn't. So I'm just going to read this really quick. But he said much of the slowing down and the expanse came directly from the band itself. In fact, there are 3 songs that are so good that I could not believe that they are not on the record. So apparently he had no say in that. And they are also the fastest song. I called and begged and pleaded, but they did not make the record. There are 3 songs that could have easily been singles. If they don't get released one day, I'm going to storm the building at Domino Records to demand that they be released. One is called Catapult, which to me is the pinwheel between their last 2 records and this record, which is interesting. You guys touched on that too. Because it has a foot in each territory musically, and it has more hooks than a bait shop. The other ones are Steepest Little Secret, which kicks ass with the giant groove, and The Desert's Only Costume Shop, which would make reading jump straight up and down. And I said, you bastards, you are going to make it seem as if I was the one that got you to slow down.
Oh wow. Yeah, wow. So obviously that's Fright Lined Dining Room. That is really interesting, isn't it? That they obviously wanted to, and that kind of says a lot about. I mean, I know we talked before about them perhaps having an editor, someone to tell them, but it's cool that they know what they want, and they're even telling Josh Homme like, "Nah, we're gonna do it this way." Like that, it's kind of cool to have someone that's willing to do that, because there's so many people in the music industry that are just pliable and go with the flow. So, but what I mean, I agree with Josh Homme more that I would have had this on the album, but they obviously wanted to go for that slower vibe, obviously. So that's obviously why Fire in the Foot is on there over some of the others because of that. That's really funny, isn't it? That he would want them on there. That's really cool. I mean, if you put those 3 songs on the album, wow.
The idea that there's one of them out there that we never got to hear. So I think at one point they had said they recorded over 20 songs for this in these sessions, and 18 were released with the cover. So if we assume that there's this song out there that he called this one The Desert's Only Costume Shop, but he called it Steepest Little Secret. It's like, what is that? I have no idea what that is.
I don't blame Josh Homme though. I mean, I would, if I'd recorded and I'm glad you said that, because it was something I said before, but if I'd have recorded all these songs and I found out they weren't putting Fright Lined Dining Room on the album, I would have been absolutely livid, because it's like, sorry, what? You're not putting a song that good on the album? Like, it's insane. It's so well produced as well. He must have been so annoyed because he's produced it so well as well.
Sounds really good.
On some 2 things that you said there. So one is about they must have he had no say in the order. So when I did a subscriber thing last week where we watched all the V-Froms that Matt did, and when it got to the Humbug era, he alludes to them in London doing some sessions of songs that they're going to record with James Ford, and he said, and we just did our desert sessions. So I think they just did a session of recording with Josh Homme, and they did these 20 songs, and then they did a session with James Ford, and then they just sat down and went, right, what do we want on the album? And perhaps came to the wrong conclusion in some eyes. But and on the second thing is, I think that whole, you're right that when you come back to it, it isn't as dark and as people make out. That's a hangover from the transition from this band that people were like, they're the savior of British music, and they did this amazing northern album that's witty and cool and then they did this follow-up which is really catchy and got these great pop songs on it and stuff like that, and then they did this, and that's why it's like, just to some people it seems like a drop into the dark rock stuff, but when you go back with a sensible head, you realize that it isn't really that much. And also you got to remember, these fans that just want that stuff probably weren't attuned to the B-sides and stuff and much, and couldn't really see the writing on the wall with songs like the Nettles, of what they were doing. So it's but wow, that is really interesting. It's good to know that he is on the same page as most of us then. Josh Homme. Why did you not put this song
he's
on
just
the
as
album? Frustrated. However, he did say Fire in the Foot was his favourite one, so I don't know which songs he would have taken off Humbug.
Strange. Maybe he just prefers all the ones that they recorded with him. He's like, take Cornerstone off, take Secret Door off.
Maybe, he was like, you just put the fast rock ones on. It is true that, and then he must have been livid because there's a really kicking to him. So he then gets labeled as the guy that slowed them down incorrectly. And then they do a melodic album, and he's like, "Oh, cool, melodic album." And they put 2 fast songs on there, and he must be like, "Hang on." So you put you put all the slow ones on an album that I made and made it so like slow down, and then you made a melodic album and you put 2 fast songs on there. He must have been so annoyed. But obviously it didn't tarnish their relationship at all. But yeah, I gotta say, big balls on them to be able to turn around and say to Josh Homme, "Now we're doing it this way." So there you go, I guess.
I know, especially if he could be selling it a little bit, but like calling in and be like, "Why isn't this on the ad?" Like pleading a case for it. It's like, man, yeah, that would be tough to be like, "Nah," or chicken.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's why they've not recorded like any actual songs with him again, because he's too scarred by the experience. they just collab a bit, you know. But yeah, I guess he probably took a view in the end. You know, it's not my album, and artists be artists, sure. I guess. On that, but I'm sure there's some Queens of Stone Age albums that some people would say, "Why did you put that song on there?" But there you go.
Sure.
But yeah, so we kind of touched the Nick and Matt link up in this is great as well. Not one of the songs where I don't want to say this because it sounds bad, but where Helder's really overly stands out. It's one of those songs where he's doing a great job and it's amazing. But there's so much stuff in the song that's great that he's just doing a fantastic job, and he's not like, "Oh, this is a Helder song," you know. This is one where he is the standout performer in the song, like your other songs that fall into that category, like Pretty Visitors, for example.
I think he's almost taking a weird role here too in the flourishes or just it's weird that he's almost kind of building the atmosphere here, because there's times where like things strip away and it is just kind of these like percussive hits. There's also the way in one of his cymbal sounds, I think he's using, like, I don't know enough about drums to know, but it's this like kind of crunchy sounding cymbal that just, it builds the atmosphere a little bit more, and it's almost weird that he's kind of building the atmosphere more in this song, which is interesting.
Yeah, he's like almost a character in the song, like just driving the narrative in a way. Yeah, and you got this kind of grungy guitar riff as well. It's very dirty, like even more than some of the others on this album. I think that guitar is dirty, and I always love it when the bass sounds like a guitar. That's one of my favorite things, when bass sounds like guitar in rock songs. That's where you have to go, "Oh, is that bass?" And then like, Nick O'Malley is a master at that. And as I saw from a few weeks ago, you know, he didn't even use a pedal. He kind of flipped it through. He put it through his amp with I think it was the way that it went through the amp that made it that sound. So he wasn't even using the pedal. It was a really cool method that he used for that.
He's just overdriving it. Yeah, but he has such a good, I like that he's able to switch between the two, because I don't think that technically it's not like so impressive, other than it's just kind of like badass and it makes you, you know, bob your head a lot. But to be able to show off the kind of like technical skills through these verses and give it that kind of swagger, and then, you know, and then also break it down, it's just it's got a cool dynamic to it.
Yeah, and I think Arctic Monkeys are kind of masters of something not being technically difficult but sounding so impressive and amazing in its form. You know, just because you go, "Well, how'd you come up with that?" Like so even something like, you know, harping back to you know, Fake Tales and Teddy Pick, or anyone that plays guitar, they're so easy to play when you learn them. They're incredibly easy to play, but you have to come up with that. And you have to you
have to be able to put it together.
So it's like, they're never really technically like, mine's probably as sort of is a again, it's not that hard to learn actually when you learn it, but I mean, hell, coming up with it, fuck if I know if I could have ever come up with something like that. Oh well, no, I don't know why I said fuck if I know. I know I couldn't have come up with anything like that. You could have left me in a guitar with, you know, the whole monkey and the typewriter thing. You could leave me in a room for eternity and I wouldn't come up with that riff. But yeah, it's got he is sort of shafted again, like you said, by this song not being on the album, because the bass is pretty cool.
Yeah. This is one, even with Matt though taking a back seat, this is the one where the pieces really come together to complement each other really well, because even even with the taking out the lyrics, but the vocals, the way that the lyrics come in and out, and they play. So one of my favorite moments is when he's going into the "So I'm back to sugar in the night," and the guitar like sure wow, but the bass is staying steady. They all just like work so well with the rhythms of the vocals, the rhythms of the bass, the guitar coming in and like kind of pumping you up a little bit. It's a fun dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the, in fact, actually, you just reminded me of something to break off slightly for a second that, because I'll forget, is two things. One is, and I wanted to bring this up to Nick, but obviously he's not here, so I can't, and I'll forget. But I was listening back to the Catapult episode that came out this week, at the time of recording, and Nick said we were talking about that song being on the album. And he said he wouldn't put it where Fire in the Foot is because he doesn't think Humbug should have any acoustic guitar in it. It doesn't work with acoustic guitar. That's why it doesn't have any. And then when I heard that, I didn't hear that when we did the episode, but I thought, wait, his favourite song on that album, it has an acoustic guitar in it.
That's fair, yeah.
And Secret Daughters as well. And I was like, huh?
Yeah.
What's he mean by that? So I wanted to point out. And also something that we talked about last night on our Two Hearts in 2 Weeks is what I remembered is that when we did the Catapult episode, there's a lyric where he says, make the girls blush. Oh, no. He doesn't say blush. He says, make the girls, the lyric is, make the girls blah, blah, blah. What is
on 2 Hearts in 2 Weeks or Catapult?
Catapult. It was just what we were talking about it last night when we recorded that episode. But
Gotcha.
He says bluff. He says I hang around to watch some poor girl bluff.
Oh, yeah. Bluff.
And it isn't until I listened back that I remembered that wasn't actually what I thought the lyric was before I read them. I thought he said hang around to watch some girl blub, as in crying. And when I listened to the record, it still sounds a bit like potentially blub to me. I was wondering what you thought, if whether you go.
I always thought that too. I always thought it was
Really?
blub.
Because there is every chance that it is, and because we've had it loads of times where the lyrics online available and stuff are wrong, and because we don't have album sleeves, although sometimes the album sleeves are wrong as well, but we don't have the album sleeves for the B-sides. I think there is a chance it is blub. So I just wanted to get that correction in case people listening were like, hang on, is it blub? It very well could be, and would actually make more sense than bluff in a way in the structure of the song.
It does. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, bluff. Yeah, I always heard blub.
Saying, but
yeah. And with
Watch
these
some Blood
B-sides
Blood.
too, I assume the way you guys were breaking down probably how the lyrics works, I think is probably right. And I assume with the B-sides, it's even less strict. With the album tracks, you know, you're definitely going to want to try to get the lyrics as close. But with the B-sides, they're probably like, send me what you got.
I mean, I'm still convinced that he must send sometimes his original lyrics to them to transcribe and forgets that he's made sort of several changes throughout the recording process to them, because some of them are like, they just get a different word in there and you're like, I wonder if that was his original line that he had in there. But yeah, who knows?
Well, what's it?
I mean,
you
you'd
guys
think it
that
would be
brought
more-
it up. So Josh Holm posted recently a picture of Alex's lyrics that I think it was the Jeweler's Hand. So you guys brought it up, didn't you? Wasn't that in the show?
I think potentially in the episode, yeah, maybe.
Okay, but anyways,
yeah,
like just
I remember the
recently
picture.
on the Instagram, he posted it, and it was, it was interesting to see. So yeah, they're probably just like sheets of paper laying around.
Yeah, I would get your thoughts on that because on Jeweler's Hands, I went into that lyrically thinking it was about Josh Homme. And then I'd heard, obviously, Alex says that it was paired with Catapult, and then you hear the Catapult lyrics and you think, well, that can't be about Josh Homme unless they have a very low opinion of Josh Homme. And then hearing Alex saying that he started that song about one thing and it's like Catapult, and then the part afterwards that they had to write more lyrics for because they did that in the session kind of became about the experience more. And I think where I landed on that was that he started the song as about this guy who's a womanizer, and then perhaps wrote this other bit which is more inspired by the desert, and then perhaps went back and tweaked a couple of lines, because I don't feel like some of the lines that started Jules Hand really worked for a womanizer perhaps. And then we had a theory on the subscriber content, which probably shouldn't be sharing because you should pay for that kind of amazing insight that we have. But I had a theory that when we broke down the 2 Hearts in 2 Weeks lyrics, which are also, I had a theory that Jules Hands, Catapult, Red Right Hand, Jules Hands, Catapult, 2 Hearts in 2 Weeks are all a very Red Right Hand-esque lyrically about this person who's a womanizer, a heartbreaker, but it's all catered around these mystical, fantastical elements where he's kind of got superpowers almost, supernatural elements, which is what Red Right Hand does as well, but that's obviously potentially just about the devil. I feel that they were perhaps all written around the same time, and they're almost a trilogy of songs when you listen to them together about this guy. Because in Jeweler's Hands, he's mystical. In Catapult, they've got stuff like, you know, he can flick you on the floor, and there's these kind of mystical elements. And then in 2 Hearts in 2 Weeks, they say, like, you know, his clocks are all wrong, but he knows by how much. You know, he'll eat your bones and spit out, you know, poison, or, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder if they were all of a piece. It's almost like a trilogy about the same dude when you listen to them all. So it's an interesting listen if anyone wants to do all three together as a trilogy.
I think there's even, when we get into the lyrics, there's pieces in here that probably supports that. And one thing so Catapult always felt like more of a character study. And with the Jeweler's Hands, it's like, it's a similar type of song, but where I feel it includes more of it's like a projection maybe of some of Alex's insecurities or something, because it is a little bit more reverent, but some of the things that he mentions are more of a reflection of what maybe Alex feels like he lacks, like the things that he focuses on this character. But I think it could be Josh Homme. It could be elements of him in the way that maybe he sees him at this point as a mentor. They're so young at this point. That's what we have to like. Humbug, they're like 22-ish, right? Yeah. When they're making this, and Josh Holmes got to be in his 30s at least.
Yeah. Probably late 30s at that point. Cause I mean, Queens of Stone Age were
so
around,
even
like,
that
90s,
dynamic.
so.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose probably 10 years. Yeah, I reckon late 30s. Looking at him these days, he looks like a dude that's pushing 60. So
he does.
He does, yeah. I mean, and God bless him, he had a cancer scare, didn't he? So, but it's one of those. Yeah, I mean, with Jules' Hands, I think where I kind of landed was I think personally, especially towards the last couple of verses, is just the experience of the desert and not so much and more about the band and their insecurity, or their insecurities as a band, and how these people, not just Josh, the whole experience, Elaine Johannes played a huge part on these songs, like more so, particularly with the guitar, and their experience and their guiding hand of them in the desert. And I mean, where did you stand on us, kind of, because you're not obviously a bigger Humbug fan as we are, I think it's fair to say. Where did you stand on us saying that Jeweler's Hands is like an amazing song and we absolutely love it and potentially our favorite song on the album? Did you think that was insane, or did you think that was
not insane? It was actually good to hear that perspective. I have always felt so as an arrangement, I think it is an impressive song. It also did feel like a bit of a Frankenstein to me. I do share those feelings of you, where it feels like they almost like had this song and then they wanted to shape it in a different way. And it kind of like, it feels a little more calculated to me. It feels a little more kind of like trying to make something work. And in the end, it is good, but it's not my favorite on the album, but I think it is a good representation of this overall sound. I think it's a great closer, kind of wrapping up the sound of this era, but I definitely don't love it as much as you guys.
Well, don't say what your favorite is, because maybe we'll get you on for a wrap up and we can do all of our lists and stuff. So, that we've done the bass drums. I think, see if we can move into the lyrics. Actually, I mean, we have to obviously talk about the post breakdown and always found after the breakdown with the diddle down and all that, it's what can only be described in my mind as a very structured wig out. So it's a wig out without the wig, you might say.
Yeah.
Sound like a fucking Dr. Seuss book or something, but it's got. I love this. It's like this guitar solo riff segue, and then it changes up into the riff. It's got this amazing cool riff, and then you got some of the JC specials there in the background doing this, and it just feels like it's like a band in a practice room just doing this sort of wig out, but it's obviously very structured and very well put together as well after that. So I imagine it started life like that and then kind of became something, and I just think it's just an amazing, probably one of my favorite rock out moments of the band altogether, really.
It's one of my favorite too, and I think I have this kind of theory, and this is just totally in my brain, but this totally feels like a band moment, and in some kind of ways it feels like a kind of flex or showing off. But I think the idea of this and many of the other songs about being pushed off as B-sides are maybe the elements that Alex personally doesn't feel as important to represent the band, because I think it is a big band moment. And as we've said, I agree with you guys too about the What If You Were Right First Time, about that being one of the biggest sounding band moments. And it does feel like this opportunity to kind of flex as this kind of indie punk band to have this huge rock sound, but it's not on the album, so it's like maybe that's not that important,
I mean, sometimes I think they do things just to kind not troll people, but just to kind of, I remember because after this and the backlash to this album, they then just randomly dropped Brick by Brick as a song. It was such a cool move. That's why I love that song, because it really upset so many people, and I loved it, and I just loved that it upset so many people. And then they just released everyone was like, the album's just going to be like this, and then they released like one of the most melodic albums like ever, and it's just funny. But yeah, I think. Yeah, they obviously had in mind they wanted to make a slow stoner rock album, and then they made a load of songs that were really good and rocky, and they went, nah, no, we don't. This is what we wanted to do. And I guess, hey, look, if you've got the option to go, nah, and you really commit to it, as from an artist point of view, it is like, and I know, like, okay, there's two ways to look at it, because as someone who like writes stuff, I can admire from the artist's point of view that having the balls to go, nah, we have this vision and I'm not going to change it. And you could argue, particularly in film and TV and stuff, that the artists that do that usually make the best content. And but then you got it from the consumer point of view, where you go, but I would have liked Fright Lined Dining Room on that. Do you know what I mean? So it's a weird one. But yeah, this is a phenomenal part of the song. And then you got the kind of, it doesn't have a breakdown with just the guitar, and then it comes back in it again, and almost sounds like there's some maracas in there at one point, I think. Don't know who that was, but that was just Josh Homme in the background.
Let me get in on this.
Let me get in on this. And as Alex sort of builds the singing, we get a sort of unusual build up by the band. I feel like they don't normally do that. That's our final build up in. It's kind of like, normally their build-ups are very, what an Arctic Monkeys build-up sounds like. I think I played a bit in, well, you'll hear it in the Sketchhead episode that isn't out yet, but there's a bit in Sketchhead at the end where they do this build-up guitar, and it sounds like Arctic Monkeys build-up guitar. It sounds like Favourite Worst Nightmare. And we highlight that, and I feel like this build-up doesn't sound like Arctic Monkeys. It doesn't sound like Favourite Worst Nightmare. They do a very different type of build-up into the big moment than they've done before.
Yeah, I agree. This has a unique feel for it. It's familiar, but even if you tried to like put it against some other songs, like, oh, it sounds like that, I think the arrangement would stand out as being unique, for sure. And it is why it's like, I don't, in my mind, it's always been one of their absolute heaviest moments. And it's a lot down to this breakdown, even though with the doom booda boom booda boom booda, it just hits so hard. It just has a lot of weight behind everything. And it's impressive.
You do wonder if this had been on the album and released as a single, how big a song it would be had it, because there is definitely an element of when you release a song as a single, it transcends popular culture more. So like you do wonder if this would have been more of a hit or something if it had been released in the same way that we kind of wonder. We said how they released My Propeller as the first single, but they actually wanted to release Pretty Visitors, and we don't know why. We sort of theorized, and there's no fact behind it, that because it was a charity shop single, that Pretty Visitors, and the charity, it's sort of calls homeless people tramps in the song, that maybe that wasn't a sort of cool thing to a charity shop to put out, so it might get. That's the only. There's no, that's just a theory, but there could have been many reasons. But it's kind of thinking like, oh, if Pretty Visitor had been a single, what would that have been like? I mean, if it's more obscure, but My Propeller is an interesting song to release as a single lyrically instead of Pretty Visitors. But it's one of those moments where you think, God, could this have been a hit? If this had been played on the radio, would people have been like, oh fuck, this is cool? Would people who don't like the band, I get a lot of people that don't like Arctic Monkeys who I know that love, like a lot of heavy metal people hate Arctic Monkeys, which I always try and convince them by going, no, listen to this one, or Lars Ulrich loves them, like, how could you go against Lars? But this is one of them where you do think like, oh, if this had been released, would people have had a different view on them from the rock world? Perhaps.
Well, yeah, and even if this was the potential to be on the album or even be released as a single, if people thought, they released Crying Lightning, My Propeller, and Cornerstone as singles, and people think of this as their dark, heavy album, I mean, like, Jesus Christ, what would be, this was one of the lead singles off of this album. But you also too have to wonder, I mean, going from the first album and then having the first single as Brainstorm, worked out well for them. People might have thought maybe that wouldn't. And so maybe it would have influenced a younger generation more into heavier style music. You never know. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said on this album in terms of the part of the band. I mean, I always say this, you couldn't have what came after without this album. This experience. But I mean, I'm the first to say I really like this album. I love this album. It might creep up in the list when we get by the end of it. But this is my least favorite Arctic Monkeys era in terms of style, as in the band. Like, this is my least favorite Alex.
Yeah,
of all the Alexes, because I think he's cool as fuck in Suck It and See It as AM, and I think he's like, amazing. And Tranquility, I just love his ridiculousness throughout that period and stuff. And this is always the one where I'm like, oh, I don't really like his look. I don't really like what the band were maybe, I don't know, the vibe that they had at the time a little bit. I think they were clearly smoking a lot of weed. I think that's quite evident if you've seen them live during that period. And I just, I'm not sure. I love the album, but I don't like the piece. And I am willing to go, I would have different songs on it perhaps as well. But it's, but I think there's an argument to say it's the most important Arctic Monkeys album. Because
I think it's definitely influential, and I think that I never, like, it's all perspective too. I mean, this album came out, and here's what I always say about Humbug, to kind of touch on this. At this point in time, with the full catalog that we have of Humbug, I'm kind of tired of people saying it's underrated, and I'm kind of tired of people saying it's overrated. I think it's kind of perfectly rated at this point. I think it's got such a particular style that the people who it's their favorite, it's got to be their favorite, because there's no other album that really sounds like this. And the people who like hate it, for the same reason. And then most people would probably place it somewhere around like third or fourth favorite. You know, like I think it sits comfortably somewhere in the middle, and I think that's okay for such a kind of experimental album like this.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to an experience from like earlier with the underrated. If it's people in the UK saying it, fans in the UK, because I think the defense of it at the time is more where that comes from. This kind of like it's underrated because if you were a fan and you thought it was good, you had to really. Same thing happened with Tranquility, by the way. I mean, the defense I'd put into that album because for some reason people really enjoyed that they thought it was shit and I loved the band and they'd love to bring it up. So, but like I say, British people love to knock people down. But this I think it's an experience thing where we were so having to defend it and go, no, it's good. You didn't give it a chance. New people, you just want them to do another Favourite Worst Nightmare and you're wrong and all. That kind of sticks then as a thing. And I think that Jamie said in an interview once that's the thing he gets the most. Like at the time, he'd meet fans and they'd be like, I like Humbug, as if they're like reassuring him. Don't worry, I like Humbug. It's a good album.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you should, yeah.
yeah. I think Jamie said at the time that this would. I remember an interview at the time, about a year after, or during Suck It and See, where Jamie said he felt that this was the album that in years to come people would come back and would reassess and go, actually, it's not as bad as people made out it was. It was just a backlash based off. It was a backlash that the band foretold about 50 times in the first two eras was going to happen, didn't they? So you can't doubt their knowledge on that.
And it always comes from different perspectives. Like as us coming up, like I've listened to these first two albums and they're releasing a third album. This is all we have. And like, this is what's next. And like pieces come out versus somebody who discovers them during the AM period and says, I'm going to go back and listen to some Arctic Monkeys. And then they get Humbug and they're like, whoa, this is really different. It's like a totally different perspective, I think.
And it's also, and it's a perspective, and you go back and listen to whatever people say I am after AM, and even though we can say now, we can, if as a fan, you can see the elements that are the same from the band and the pieces, but to go back that way and be like, whoa, that must be, and but then as a fan, when people say it's bad, then you get like, I heard a similar thing. I heard someone on a podcast the other day saying, we were talking about Curb Your Enthusiasm, and they were saying like, oh, they can't go back and watch the first few series because it was like late 90s, early 2000s, and the quality's too bad. And I'm like, no, what are you talking about? It's just, sorry, the gradient on the screen's not as good. Like, fuck off. And that kind of, so it's that kind of same thing where when someone comes into something late and then they go back and the style's changed or the type's changed, but you're in the position of going, no, you're wrong. It was great at the time, and you don't understand. But it's all personal conjecture, isn't it? Really, and what you put on it. So there you go. But this is this for a long time was the Arctic Monkeys' most divisive album. Certainly isn't now. It was kind of great though. Nick is right though, that when Tranquility came out, there was suddenly a lot of people that said that this album was great. That didn't say that Humbug was great before.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because they were just latching on the guitar stuff again. So people are changeable, aren't they? But to finish up the music, we have a great outro here for this one. Great riffs, dirty guitars. We said about Helders being subdued, but as ever, even in a subdued song, he throws some mad drums and drum rolls in there, just out of nowhere, as he always does. And we get a pause and then an amazing end, I think, a play out of the riff that leaves us hanging.
The riff is good, yeah.
Great end. More on that later. Hold that thought on the great end.
Okay.
I've got a kind of thought on that in a bit. But as a kind of breakwater, I'm going to do the section where we talk about who we might want to cover this song.
I'm gonna form a covers band and all.
I'm not sure if you have one, and this is going to be really, perhaps you might think I'm insane, but I couldn't get out of my head that I would love to hear Kanye West cover this song. Because I was just kind of, I could just imagine the hip hop version. You just add a beat under it, because it's kind of got a kind of hip hop, even though it's rock, it has got this kind of beat to it that you could see transcending. I could just imagine him like going like, I can feign excitement fluently as I can busk shock and stuff. I just couldn't get out of my head Kanye doing it for some reason, and that kind of stayed with me. But I do like to go a bit mad.
Yeah. So So I know this has kind of like come up before, but I think that this song, even though that the interesting thing about this song is, even though it's Arctic Monkeys' heaviest, the Western influence is so prominent to me. I don't know. Something about the sway of it. And so I almost can hear this version where it's not so heavy, where it's like slowed down and the Western elements are even brought more out with some more kind of like Southern style instrumentation. And so the one that kind of stuck out to me was what's Jack White's band that is more Southern style? Is it the Raconteurs? Yeah, I think the elements that they play with, and they have a lot of more like kind of bluesy Southern style sound that I think that they could do a very interesting, more like Southern style to this. I think it would be interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's the take that Nick would love as a massive Jack White fan, so I'm sure he'd be happy with that. But the other way, I mean, it's like, I think there was a bit in Catapult that I said I felt was very, Western, that bit when it changes up and it's like, and the dust track, waiting for the trail, and it's got that sound with the guitar, always reminds me of a Western as well. So, I mean, and that's, again, it's interesting that this came shortly after the first Shadow Puppets album, which is very Westerny, so obviously a bit of a hangover from that as well, perhaps.
They have a song, you guys haven't covered it yet, I don't think, but Gas Dance, that kind of reminds me of this song as well. Yeah, so the kind of dark elements too. So yeah, it would be interesting to see how dark some of that gets too.
Yeah, that is. We were actually talking about last night about how dark the B-side titles are for the show. It's like Gas Dance and what's the Hang the Cyst.
yeah.
So let's move into the lyrics then. So I always ask Nick, so I'll ask you what your thoughts are on what this song is about, and that may break into segments perhaps, as it does for me, but we'll see.
I wrote kind of a main theme for this one of what I think it's got some sub themes going on, or a couple different breaks, and some of it kind of touching on what we were talking about a little bit with the Jeweler's Hands. But the main kind of idea I wrote about this was this phrase that we say, I don't know if you guys have it in England, but boredom is the devil's delight. Is that like a phrase that you guys have?
Yeah, I think it's similar to, I think our version of that is the devil makes work with idle hands.
There you go.
Yeah, which I think, so exactly, yeah. I would agree heavily on that. I think that is exactly what the song's about, but I would also add in the element that I think the start, particularly the song, begins in a strip club, and that's what a Fright Lined Dining Room is. Yeah, obviously, yeah. Just making it clear for people that Fright Lined Dining Room is, and he's in a strip club and he's missing his girlfriend. He's perhaps got insomnia and he's struggling to write, and like you say, it's devil and he obviously feels uncomfortable in the setting with these guys that perhaps don't find it a problem, which is something I can massively relate to as we get into it, because I'm not a strip club guy at all. It'd be my worst nightmare. I can see that it's very similar. Actually, do you remember when we did Pretty Visitors and we kind of said that actually what that is about is Alex on tour and not being able to sleep and writing, and how it messes with his brain, and he's doing, and then but the good thing is the gigs and the Pretty Visitors, and it's similar to that in a way in terms of his, not being able to sleep and stuff, and perhaps a drug element to it as well. But let's begin and see what we think of that. We'd like to touch on all the possibilities. So the first sort of like, you thrive on dancing in our laps before the more familiar chaps who know the curtain leads to fever. I've thought so. Strip clubs, the dancers love it in a way. The guys love it. They almost get a fever. Sort of strip fever, baby. Like fever in that good way, like the fever. Like it's I don't know, spring break fever is a strip in the country or something like that. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's pretty much the strip club sort of element and the characters.
Well, even. Yeah, to make it even kind of worse, is that I really love the inclusion, because it really paints this picture for me of the before the more familiar chap. So even if the idea of I agree with you. I'm in the same idea of like going to a strip club. It's not my thing. It's not my scene. But there's even this element of going to the strip club early, like,
oh god, in the day, like
yeah, it's like showing up at the strip club at like 4 p.m. or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in the Sopranos, like the when it's open in the day and the kind of sad sack she gets in there with the drink. Yeah, if you're in a strip club in the afternoon, then something's going wrong in your life, isn't it? Really, that's kind of. It's not a thing that we really have here because I don't. Well, actually, I could be worth to. I feel like strip clubs are only opening in the evening here, but I could be really wrong with that. It's not my scene. Thank God. But obviously, they have those kind of afternoon ones in America. I have been in one. This was my experience with a strip club. I knew I never wanted to go in a strip club. I was out one night and a friend went, "I've never been in a strip club. Should we go in one?" And I was drunk and I went, "Yeah, well, why not?" I walked in. A woman walked past me with her top off. I said, "Let's leave," and we left, and that was it. It was so uncomfortable. I don't get it. I don't know what's good about it. I don't know why you would want to sit there and do that. It feels very creepy. It feels very sinister. I got no time for it. I think it's sleazy and it's horrible, and I think Alex agrees, which is good to hear that our hero agrees that. Although he does have another song set in a strip club where he seems like he's happier in the environment on AM, although he's specifically talking about a girl that he likes in there that isn't a stripper, so perhaps that's okay. I imagine LA strip clubs are something to behold as well. Some of them on the outskirts.
That's true.
In the desert.
That could be an experience. Yeah. Well, actually, the element to me that stands out, opposed to the idea of like, oh, they might be cool in the desert, is actually more the opposite aspect, and I think plays out through a couple lines in this, which is we have these small towns in America that are just like, there's one place where there is to do anything, and it might be this combination of things where it's the only bar, maybe there's some strippers in the corner, maybe a band comes in and plays in the corner sometimes, and I'm imagining them in this studio and be like, let's break it, like let's do something, and it's like, well, there's this one watering hole, like there's nothing else to do here, and then being like, well, I guess let's check it out, and it just being so sleazy and dingy and just so unappealing.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we have a similar. So, well, during the pandemic, me and my girlfriend got really hooked on a show called Bar Rescue. So I've seen a lot of these places that you're talking about, which is a phenomenal program. If no one's seen it, but the in here we have. There's these kind of old, what we call seaside towns that are kind of desolate now, and they might have this really dingy strip club there that nobody really goes to apart from some seedy locals, and who knows what goes on in there and what goes on in the back rooms. No, thank you. Nobody wants to know about it. But we have, so that's kind of that. Our similar American small towns of like these small seaside resorts in England that kind of come to life a bit in the summer, but they were good in the 70s, and now they're just not, and nobody really wants to go there, and it's run down and it's horrible. It's a similar vibe that we have, and those bars are a bit similar to the American watering holes that you say. He said that he wrote all these lyrics before. I would be shocked if he didn't write these lyrics in the desert, because this feels like and even almost, well, he says it more enough, but this feels like I don't want to talk about those guys in any disparaging way, but I feel like the guys that would be up for going to a strip club and kind of enjoying it are some of the people that Josh Homme hangs around with. I don't want to put that on them, but
I think there is that element to this, and the tie to the jeweler's hands that I had was talking about them being young. There's also this like kind of subplot of like when in Rome type of situation of like, we're here, there's people around us that are like, hey, let me show you around, let me show you like what we do, or just showing people a good time. And it could even just be a perception thing of, you're this 21, 22-year-old kid. You've got this girlfriend that you love, that you're attached to, but you're also hanging out with these 35-year-old men who run a recording studio, who drink and smoke out in the desert, who go hang out at the strip clubs. And that can like maybe break your illusion a little bit. You hold these people up as like kind of people heroes or people you respect. And you'd be like, you're just on different levels with your life.
being a similar age as them, if it was me, I would have been so intimidated by that and been like so out of place. I think, I wouldn't have. I mean, they probably had more musically to talk about, thankfully, to be able to make it work. But yeah, I'd be so lost. And yeah, I mean, the same vibes I get from that is I've got a hatred as well as strip clubs to casinos. Casinos here in the UK are very different, perhaps, to they are in the US. I'm not sure. Or, maybe
I don't
outside
like
of
casinos
Vegas,
either, though, in this states.
No. There's this. They always end up with some people that I don't have a lot in common with in a casino. I mean, this is a few years ago when I was single and drinking a lot more. But I would end up in one at like 5 a.m. because it's the only place to drink because they stay open all night, 24 hours.
Yeah.
Watching some. It's half dead. There's no music in there. It's really flat. I've got a drink. I'm half asleep. There's some Chinese guy on a sort of table throwing his life savings away, and I'm like, what is going on here? And this is the vibe I kind of get from Alex in this song, sort of just that kind of like, what am I doing here? And I'm tired and I'm feeling weird, but yeah, it's good that we relate to him on that. And maybe it's a generational thing, I mean, although there's plenty of people from our generation that are I don't want to say scum, but that might be too hard.
No, I mean, it's a definite vibe, and I think that comes in the next
seedy,
line,
isn't it?
Yeah, where he says like we might require a breather, so it's even kind of like this kind of polite thing, like let's like dip out, like not even like let's leave, of like I'm gonna step outside. And then the next line of I am the true truant, I can feign excitement fluently as solid as I can, but shock. So he's like playing along. He's there's people there who don't feel the same as him. Yeah. So he's like, whoa, he's kind of feeding into it, but definitely he's not into it.
I mean, as someone who I can relate, I love that line because it's probably one of my favorites because I can relate to that playing along thing. I mean, I've worked in the business world for a long time. And there's so many like times I've been out with people that I have nothing in common with, but you can't let them know that because if they feel threatened by you in any way, then you're out, you're cast out. So you just have to go with it and pretend. So I can get that completely. You just kind of feigning that excitement and playing along with it and being a bit of a lad or whatever, like, and it's like, and then you feel a bit disgusted with yourself afterwards. And I'm going to ask you this because obviously he's talking to someone and he's going out of a breather, perhaps with someone else. And you have to say the first thing that comes into your head. No, just first name that comes into your head. If you had to say which member of the band would be most comfortable in a strip club, you would say
Jamie Cook.
I was going to say Jamie Cook as well. I don't know why.
I don't know why either. When I imagine, like, if we're like, hey, let's go grab a breather, I would imagine, like, him grabbing Matt. I don't know. Matt pops in my head and be like, let's, like, step outside, man.
Matt's, I reckon Jamie would be enjoying it. Matt, I think, is on a similar wavelength to Alex, and he grabbed Matt. And I think Nick's a bit of both. I think Nick just floats. I think he can enjoy a strip club and he can be outside moaning about it. Nick seems like the kind of person, the jester that stands aside and watches everything and then comments on it. That's how I see it. Yeah. But yeah, that's interesting, Jamie. I think, look, Jamie is in a mold of person. He was a sort of what we call Sunday League football player here. He was going to be a plasterer. He's a very working class lad. He fits that kind of world, perhaps more so than the rest of them. Which is so interesting that he's become the sort of vibe guy, the guy that comes up with the crazy thing. He's adapted. He's changed. If I was to place we always talk about Alex's transformation, but if I was going to say who's changed the most from whatever people say I am to now, I would actually say Jamie, because he's become this kind of instrumental cog in the wheel that experiments and stuff from this guy that was basically just a typical lad that liked his football and was going to be a plasterer that was in a band. You know what I mean? So very much developed. But yeah, that is a good line. I love the bus shock line as well. I love the way he performs it. It's a great line. And he says, "And I know all too well I shouldn't break the key off in the lock." Okay, I had someone. I do a bit of research, trying to get different opinions outside of my own online, and some are good, some are bad. Someone was suggesting that is a sexual innuendo, but that would imply that Alex is then I know all too well I shouldn't break the key off in the lock. I guess I don't like that as a sexual metaphor. I don't want to think about what that means.
Yeah.
Does it mean is that breaking the key off in the lock? I mean, is that sorry? They were suggesting it meant he was going to impregnate one of the women. I thought, well, that's too far. I don't want to delve into that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I could see it as like, yeah, my interpretation is I put with all these lines together, the idea of like I can pretend to go along with something and be into it, but I also need to be careful not to put myself in a situation where I can't get out of it.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wrote down. That I see it as based off the lines before. He can pretend to be with them. He has to remember not to. I've done into this phrase in the US, but burn his bridges.
Exactly.
He can't behave a certain way and burn his bridges in that sense. And I think I like to think that's what it is more than some lewd sexual innuendo, which it could equally be as well with Alex. He's got both in his locker, hasn't he?
It could be, yeah. It absolutely could be. I like to think of it as like an escape door. If you broke the key off in the lock, you couldn't open the door to get out of there. So
if he's in a strip club with Josh Homme and his friends and these guys, and he starts to be like a bit like, oh, this is seedy and grim and that, and then he's got to go make rest songs with them. Like you just don't. That's the reason why. That's what we said about in the business world, and you just have to kind of go with it because otherwise you're not gonna get that promotion if you're not part of the gang or whatever. And it's you kind of sell your soul for what you need, I guess, in a way. But I think very much. I think when what a lot of people on the internet do is they take a single line and they put an idea on it and they don't take the context of the previous lines into account. Yeah, you see that a lot, particularly on something like Genius. But the next bit is, and the tumble splits the frame, revealing silken fits in the Fright Lined Dining Room. Before we delve into the lines before, Fright Lined Dining Room as a metaphor for a strip club is phenomenal. It's amazing. It relates to what we were saying. I'm fright lined in a strip club. Like it feels fright lined to me if I'm in there. And dining room as well is a sort of strange way of. But I guess it's kind of people are dining in there on the women is a sort of, which is something he leads to in the next line as well, is just cool. What a cool. And by the way, how no one's had that as a band name yet, I don't know. Fright Lined Dining Room, what a line. Incredible.
Well, it kind of goes off the idea too of like a play. I mean, he doesn't mention this here, but we hear this or two, like women are meat. So they're just like feasting with their eyes, but they're devouring these women. Essentially, the idea is kind of so. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to place this idea of like a dining room and the kind of scathing like throw a gaze towards them while they feast. Like he's making it the show, but also it's like very like spiteful and stuff. It's a good performance.
It's a good choice of word feast for the sort of gluttony of men leching at women, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like greedy almost. Those types of men. Greedy almost and leching towards them. Tumble splits the frame, revealing silken fits. More difficult, unless you have an illusion. I can only think silken fits clothes they're wearing. No, that's it. That's about as close as I get, really. But.
Well, with the tumble and the splits the frame and the revealing the silk and fits. So a couple things is like the idea of like getting drunk and stumbling around, and even the idea of like at strip clubs, like you have this kind of still it has this like backstage where there's this curtain and like people like get ready or whatever. And so I think it kind of also too works for the same idea we were talking about with the idea you have of these people where there's this curtain that's put up and the idea of like getting drunk and like stumbling and pulling that curtain down and kind of like seeing what's behind the curtain, I think works well for the idea of this like stage where people perform, but backstage they're just like regular people. They're getting dressed. It's not all like hot or whatever. And then like these people who live and you respect them in certain ways, and then they get like really fucked up, and you're like, oh, well, this is kind of like a sad middle-aged man sometimes. So I think it works both ways together.
Yeah, no, I was wondering if Flitz the Frame was kind of making me think about that, like, the revealing that the truth beyond type thing, that a glance behind the curtain, the reality of,
Yeah.
let's say, yeah, the Wizard of Oz, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's probably one of those two is probably exactly right on where it is. And then the days drag, and so this is where he kind of switches into more, I would say, the section where he's kind of made the comments about the strip club and his quantum there, but then moves into what you said about the insomnia and the time dragging and stuff like that, and more into a Pretty Visitor style where he says the days drag their heels when you're not there to crack the whip. I allude that to a partner like Alexa, let's say, for example, or whoever was, around at this time. They tend to overlap. No comment on that. But when you're not there to crack the whip, it feels girlfriendy to me in a way, like she's not there to keep him in line, keep him focused.
This is where as you said, it changes as the subplot comes in. I actually think I might be projecting here. I actually think these lines are like very sweet and personal. And the subplot, as you had mentioned, I completely agree. The way that I see it, this playing out based on what we had before, is when we come to here, it's the idea of like getting outside your daily routine with someone where you're in a new location and a new lifestyle, like new locations, new people, but you're also without a person that you have developed a rhythm and a kind of dependence on. And like, so the crack the whip, I think, is almost this kind of saucy play where when you're with your girlfriend, someone you're very comfortable with, you're okay being a little seedy or debauchery or whatever, but it's sweet. They're the person you're comfortable with or whatever. And it's a good reflection of what we've just come from, where it's like, well, when I'm with these like old guys and we're just getting wasted and there's just like women walking around naked, that's not fun to me. But when I'm with you, that's where I'm comfortable. Yeah.
It's, what you've touched on. Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, it's me and I've said about not liking strip clubs, but me and my girlfriend always constantly say if we go to America or Vegas, we would love to go to a strip club together for a laugh, because
together,
together it would be funny and it would be a different experience. I think I feel uncomfortable in there and I feel seedy, whereas with your girlfriend just having a laugh, it's not seedy or uncomfortable, is it? Similar thing in, I don't know if you've ever been to Amsterdam. I've been there and walked down the kind of red light district, and I hated it. It felt horrible and seedy. There's women in glass fucking boxes looking like advertising. I think it's grim. But when I went there with my girlfriend and we walked down it, it was quite a funny experience to do that. And then we started with a prostitute. No, we didn't. But it's, you're quite right. And I didn't think of that. I like that a lot. That it would be different if she was there in a way. You can have that, but he doesn't feel right in there. I love that.
And it's almost like he's waiting to see her and the weeks wait to burst. It's almost like that thing where you feel like you're out of place and you're not yourself and you're waiting for the person or that piece to kind of like bring you back to who you are. That's kind of what it feels like in this line.
I agree that the weeks wait to burst is that exactly, that waiting to see them or whatever, that kind of thing. However, I have to say this because we are inclusive of all opinions. Someone, probably the same person that said about the sex element, they said that they think and the weeks wait to burst like a sachet of brats was someone, they claimed that sachet of brats was an old term for a condom, which I don't think is true. They've just completely made that up. I don't believe that. A sachet of brats. I don't know. And the wait to burst was him bursting sexually. I'm just not having it. I'm not allowed to. It's fucking disgusting for a start. I don't know think about it. But I'm just not having it. I don't know. This is just the internet, isn't it? Typical internet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. A sachet of brats, though. What do you? It might. So I don't know if a sachet of brats is something American. I don't know. You might
no, not that I am. That's not something I'm familiar with.
Okay, well then B, I have always thought that when he's saying wait to burst like a sachet of brats would be a bratty child. I don't know if you call them that in America, like a brat,
Yeah.
a little brat, yeah, like a sachet full of them waiting to burst, and when it does burst, it's going to be full of all like. But then again, that doesn't really apply with it being a good thing. So I really don't know what he intends with that line.
Oh, well, I thought it was short for bratwurst. Like the way that the meat is like squeezed into the tube of the bratwurst, and it like so it's just like like it's a pressure, and then like you know how you like heat up like a brat or something, and it can like
the sexual guy will be even more on it if we're talking about bratwurst.
That's how I always took it.
You know what? I did think brat's possibly bratwurst, but then I couldn't think of what he meant by that. But yeah, there's the meat being squeezed in like that. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I do though think he is being clever, because even the idea the days drag their heels. So we say that of like time moving slowly, but we're also in the strip club setting. And so when you're placed in the strip club setting and you say heels, you think of like high heels, but he's also saying drag your heels. I think he's playing with, and then even the crack the whip. So I think each line he is using these kind of sexual imagery, but to say about, but that's why I think it's sweet, because he's like, when I'm with you, when you come, it's not so seedy, or like you said, we can laugh about it, or I feel like myself. When I'm alone, it's just this darkness and this like grim place.
And yeah, and it's something he did in My Propeller as well, where by the end of that, I kind of settled on it. It was more about perhaps a creative process, I think, was where I landed, or something along those lines. But it also has a lot of unmistakable sexual imagery in there.
Yes.
Yeah, that he claims he knows nothing about, which I'm calling bullshit.
That's cool.
yeah. In the same way that when Suck It and See got covered in America, didn't it? And they were kind of like, we don't really see.
Yeah, they're like,
yes, you do.
Well,
I don't understand why. It just meant when you suck on a humbug and reveal what's inside. Like, yeah, okay. But yeah, no, I agree on that. And then, okay, I'm interested to get your thoughts on this. The old pantomime villain, and I assume you know what a pantomime villain is.
I looked it up like from the British standpoint. Yes.
Follows my coat and he hides where it hangs and he spies through the slats. A pantomime villain isn't, I suppose, a million miles away from a villain in an old American film, like when you watch a film from the 30s or the 40s or something like that, and you got this kind of ridiculous guy with a mustache. Like, the pantomime villain in a musical isn't much different. What's your thoughts on that section?
Well, this is another one where I tied it together and try to put it in the context of like what's happening, and then also to like the next couple lines with the Desert's Only costume shot. But the thing that I ended up writing down is kind of like creating this dark character, which I also kind of said you could see is in the same way of like it's going back to the Red Right Hand and stuff. Devil on the shoulder, just the devil, temptation. And even though he has these feelings and stuff like that, the fact that it's attached to the coat and it's looking through the closet, it's like that's you would put on your coat to go out. So even like again, if you're in this like isolated location, all you're doing is like playing music, everybody's like going out, you know, it's hard not to be like there's nothing else to do, we're we're going, you know. So that's kind of how I associated it.
I would 100% agree. And because the temptation, what else it's the same as, saying about the, I still ended up going to casinos those times, even though I hated them, just to something to do, isn't it? And I think as well, it's interesting because, and Meanwhile in the Desert, I think they do pair, because Meanwhile in the Desert's, again, would be weird if he wrote that line before he went to the desert. Meanwhile in the Desert's only costume shop, the cows hang on wait to rot away the identities of the willing. So in my head, a costume shop somewhere where you can hide who you are, place that with the identity line. Obviously a costume shop is, I mean, the Desert's only costume shop could imply that the strip club is the place where people perhaps hide who they are while they're in there. And a cowl is obviously like a hat, isn't it? It's like a sort of, he's hiding and rotting. Their identity is rotting away, hidden under the hat, perhaps, while they're in there, and they're sort of these other people while they're in there.
Yeah, or even the idea of like
willingly,
Well, it's a
album.
temptation too. So like he's saying, oh, it's a temptation to go out and the devil looms there. So it's almost to this idea of like losing yourself, of like, if I
Yeah.
spend enough time here and I keep doing
Yeah.
this again and again, is my identity going to be gone? And when I meet this person again who I'm waiting to see, am I going to be like transformed? Am I going to be rotted away? Am I going to be like these
Yeah.
old men? You know, something like that.
It's just completely relatable to what we were saying earlier about I know for me, like, and it's tranquility ties in heavily to that time for me. There's a lot of things Alex says in that album that relate to when I was going out in this business world and pretending to be somebody else, where there was a point where I was kind of like, my own identity is getting lost here. Like, I'm like not this guy really, but I don't know whether I am this guy anymore, or like, when did I stop playing the part? And that's why I can see that kind of point of his, that worry that if you hang around it too much, are you going to sort of sell your soul to the point where you don't know who you are anymore and your identity? So it's quite deep, complex stuff, really, from his point of view.
So,
which we love. And then, so this is interesting. So I'm back to Sugar in the Night, rocketing shutter doors despite the shop not opening for hours, and then you can itch, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is where this whole section for me is not okay. So I see the shop is his mind, as he alludes to writing in the next line with the scribbling. So the shop is his mind. It's the middle of the night, so the shop shouldn't be open for hours. His mind shouldn't be open, but the shutter doors are rocketing because his mind's rocketing at an hour that it shouldn't be. So insomnia, perhaps, but you can't say that without bringing to the element that Sugar in the Night does give an allusion to cocaine, perhaps, which there would have been some there of almost definitely, I would say, cocaine going around in the desert. But yeah, but it could. But having said that, sugar could also just be a metaphor for insomnia, because sugar makes you hyper as well and in your brain. So yeah.
I think it's both. I again, with the days drag their heels to crack the whip, it's like those are very sexual imagery. Is he being sexual? No, he's not. He's using that as the point of reference. In the same way, we know that. So, and I really do think this is playing with his mindset at the time and really putting in perspective these young guys hanging out with these other people, because Sugar in the Night is another thing that makes you think of a child. Like, don't give your child sugar before they go to bed. They're going to be up all night. And we know that he had trouble like sleeping or whatever. So in the way we were talking about, like the jeweler's hands, how he sees himself compared to this other person that he respects, or he feels smaller than, or he feels like less mature in, or a child compared to. I think he's doing the same thing. It's like, even if people are around like taking drugs, it's like, am I trying to be a man and like take drugs or like do these things, or am I this restless child who like wants to write songs deep into the night and like can't get some sleep? I think it's both.
Yeah, he does like to give you which is great, obviously, from an interpretation point of view, to always have that. When we do these interpretations, you bring either two different ideas to it usually, and then you bring your own personal stuff to it. And you can rarely, like with his more lyrics like this, come away with a definitive conclusion. But that's great. You don't always want to, like, if you ask a songwriter to tell them what the song's about, they don't really want to do it, because you make your own assertion. You don't need to know what it's about, And I think it can be both. And then obviously you can itch, flap, and whistle and try to avoid the talk. I mean, when I get insomnia, I itch. I always get you're just about to fall asleep and you get a random itch in your beard or something. And then flap and whistle is, that's kind of, you can moan about it. You can flap your gum, as much as you want. I don't know if that's another Britishism, like flapping your gums. I don't know if you have that. It's what we say for like complaining about something to no one, essentially. It's not going to get you anywhere.
Flap your gums,
Just flap your gums, and whistle and avoid the talk. The tick-tock of the clock until morning. You can do that all you want. You're not going to get anywhere. As I scribbled over drivel, you were snoring, showing off. So I love that, because in my head, he's writing, very particular in my head, to set the scene, is he's writing drivel in the middle of the night of insomnia, like he alludes to in Pretty Visitors, where, I mean, God, I think I might have said this before, but there was a time recently where I couldn't sleep, and I had this amazing idea for a film, and I wrote it down in my phone. I was like, oh my God, I fell asleep. And then 2 days later, I remembered, I went, oh yeah, and I went back to it. It was absolute nonsense.
God.
It was terrible. It was one of the worst ideas anyone's ever had.
Yeah.
Because he has insomnia, but the other person in the room, who is Matt in my head for some reason, he's showing off by the fact that he can sleep. He's snoring, and he's jealous of that. And it's like, oh, showing off. It's a very funny line to think that you kind of, well, you're showing off because you can sleep.
Yeah, your sleep. Yeah. And I think I really like this song because I really do think it's another one of the more personal ones for Alex, because I can almost like see, like you said, with Matt sleeping in the room, because I think this wraps up the total idea of the insecurity as well. And we know, as you were saying, they were kind of like going through this transformation. You see their clothes change. Alex at this time definitely was more, moody and kind of pouty and stuff like that. And I could just totally see him, this anxiety that exists. Not only it's from the idea of like, I'm trying to like write a song, I'm like trying to finish something, I can't sleep, but also to this idea that he has mapped out in the song of like, I don't feel like I belong, but somebody else, there's somebody right over there who just fits in. Like, you can sleep, you're just going along, that you don't seemingly have that anxiety and like you're showing off about it, even though you're just living, So it's a cool, it works on like so many different levels.
It really does. And I actually think it's a good now think about it, as I was doing the lyrics, it is a really good sort of narrative, good to pay. If you listen to Pretty Visitors, then this, because they're both kind of about insomnia and writing, they're a good pair to put together. Perhaps that maybe, I mean, that could play into why songs that go on an album. Alex knows what they're about, and maybe he goes, well, I've got a song about that and I prefer that. And I absolutely wouldn't take Pretty Visitors off the album. So but I mean, maybe that's what they negotiated with Josh Homme is, look, we won't put Fright Lined on there, but we're putting Pretty Visitors on there, don't worry.
Because it's gonna be a single. That's what they told him.
It's gonna be a single, and then it wasn't.
We gotta get on it. Yeah.
What the fuck? But yeah, it's it's a mishmash, but it is about that, boredom. And what's cool is as well, if you said to someone, oh, they've got a song called Fright Lined Dining Room, and you said, what's that about? And you said, oh, it's about being in a strip club and being uncomfortable, but then also about the time passing in the desert and being unsure of who you are, and insomnia and writing while you're tired, and they'd be like, really, I didn't see that coming. With that title, do you know what I mean? That's what's cool about it.
Yeah.
I do love it when he does that, and obviously this album has had a lot of that. We've got Suck It and See has a lot of that in a different way. You're very more relationshipy metaphors and things, and then AM is quite straightforward, but Tranquility obviously is a lyrical treasure trove, let's say.
I think it's funny to think about this song from a lyrical standpoint compared to AM, because where I see this one as this kid who's like really going through this, early 20s kind of adolescence, like I'm being exposed, where AM is just pure confidence or pure, I'm participating. I know who I am. I'm not feeling those anxieties. I'm comfortable in my skin no matter where I go. And I got this saunter about me. I think it's interesting to see the kind of like two different Alexes in here.
It ties into a lot about what I always say about if you're writing songs from that age to now, you've gone through all the phases that we all do growing up, but that's out in the world, and like you say, that swagger and even the confidence of AM in a kind of sexy way, and I think a lot of stages of the song are similar stages that I think a lot of us have in our lives, like late 20s, maybe a bit more confident, and maybe that's more of your I don't know, you sexy sex. I don't know.
Your experience,
times. Yeah, you know how to speak to women better. You're not just sort of desperate for sex when you speak to them, so it's off-putting and stuff like that. And then I think with Tranquility, the confidence to do something like that is something that you would only have in your early 30s. I think I always say that, what I've found is, and it's why there's a reason why, like somewhat crazy, like 60% of people that get married in their 20s have a divorce, but people that get married in the 30s, that drops significantly. And I think that is a lot to compare to the band is you know who you are more at that point, so you know who the right person to be with is.
Yeah,
if you don't know
exactly.
if you don't know who you are, how the fuck are you supposed to pick the person that you're supposed to spend your life with? but from a band perspective, he knows who he is by Tranquility, and he can do these things, which is crazy. And we've kind of watched him go through all the things that we went through, but had to he's had to put that in the public domain in a way.
Yeah.
I don't blame him for putting metaphors in there and masking it, because it certainly wouldn't want these thoughts going in there.
Yeah.
I mean, especially I think I said during there's a couple like Secret Door where he's when we kind of deciphered it and I gave him my reasons, he's saying some scathing things about Alexa and problems with that, which tracked with what we know about her as a British celebrity. And you wouldn't want that to be obvious because he's still with her. So it's quite a bold move, really. But so he had to mask it behind that. And obviously, with the process of time, and you can kind of go, oh, is that what he was saying? So it's I think that's kind of he's very rarely, AM's probably the most where he is personal without any metaphor to hide that it's him or something like that. I think AM's his most, I'm fucking horny and I'm going to talk about it.
Well,
it
could even, if we looked at like Catapult and even this song as if he perceived it as being maybe like disrespectful or so, like he's writing pure the way he thinks of like, oh, I'm spending time with these people and it's actually like kind of seedy and like not that great or whatever. But he sees that later as like, oh, I mean, like I still love these guys, like we shared some good, maybe like that could be the reason why he didn't want, because Jeweler's Hands is definitely more reverent to the character, whereas Catapult and this are definitely more like, no, that's some seedy shit.
Scathing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just slaps his ass and where I outlaid one of my worst memories in a bar during that
that's a good story.
It's horrible. But we move to the part of the show where I will ask you for your favorite lyric.
Too busy with the mind on clever lines.
So, your favorite lyric from this song, which is a song of good lyrics, so it's difficult.
It is, yeah. Almost every line like is really clever and well put together. I think ultimately though, I'm gonna go with I am the true truant. I can feign excitement fluently, as solid as I can bust shop. And it's also the way it's delivered. Like that's already a very clever line, but the rhythm in which you work it in to deliver is very impressive.
Yeah, I'm gonna have true. Yeah, there's just something nice about the alliteration as well. And I think I was saying this on last night's 2 hearts in 2 weeks isn't alliteration, but it's like this weird sentence alliteration that's just satisfying. 2 hearts in 2 weeks, you know. But I'm gonna go. But I've got two kind of a cop out in that I'm going Fright Lined Dining Room because I just think it's such a great way to describe a strip club that I couldn't get past it. But I'm gonna shout out to this section because of his performance of it, which is my favorite of his performance in the song. He said, the days drag their heels when you're not there to crack the whip, and the weeks wait to burst like a sachet of brats. I just love the way he's like, the days drag their heels when you're not there to crack the whip, and the weeks wait to burst. It's probably a song with good Alex range, this one as well, for this album, really. But another difficult one, your favorite musical moment.
Bad sound in your ear that make you get up and down.
Sophie's
This one's
choice.
really tricky. Yeah. This one was really tricky. You want to go first?
I thought you needed a couple more moments.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go all of the guitar because I think both parts, the cleaner, reverby guitar and the dirty, are just amazing, and they just drive the song in this way that I haven't heard them do before. So I'm gonna go with that.
I do love the guitar shrieks. The wow, they're really cool, actually. But I mean, if we're gonna, so then I would almost then, because shouts outs to the bass. I like the breakdown, the do like, and he just kills it, man. I would just like have to get, that's one of like my biggest like bummers, I think, is that like just he did such a good job and the song's not on the album. But yeah, I would go with the bass overall, but specifically, like I said, that breakdown always gives me like the stank face. I'm always like, oh man,
Yeah.
this shit's going right here.
Yeah, that is an incredible moment, to be fair. Yeah, it is amazing. I didn't actually always know it was bass. I think I used to assume it was guitar, and then I realized, and I was like, oh wow, it's even more impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think bass players playing stuff that quick and fast is always like quite impressive as well because of the thickness of the string and the size of the frets. You know, always that little bit more. I just thought it just popped in my head because of Josh Homme sort of desperately wanting Fright Lined Dining Room on the album. Do you think they'd never played it live as another troll to him, like just as an ultimate troll to him? That they're not only are they not put it on the album, they're never going to play it live either.
I don't think so. I don't think because they do play Catapult. It is weird that they didn't release.
Yeah.
I wonder how he feels about that. That the other song just never got released. That's so weird.
I'm still hoping for When We're Old. When we're
Yeah.
like, you know, 70s, that they're gonna do what Bowie's family have done and release like a new song from his catalog every week onto Spotify.
Yeah.
We're gonna get some of these songs, but you probably have to be dead for that, so I don't want that. I don't know. Are you as excited as I have this? I think it scares Nick, but I have this sort of looking forward to the phase when I'm in my sort of mid-50s and Arctic Monkeys don't really do as many albums, but Alex has this weird solo career.
Solo band, yeah.
55-year-old man that's just doing this mad shit, and I go to see him and think he's going and get to see him at really small venues because he's not with the band and stuff. That's like sort of his Morrissey phase. I'm really looking forward to that kind of time, but hopefully it doesn't become as much of a twat as Morrissey, obviously, is what we do. But personally, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Unfortunately, it has the
I'm
intended
looking
consequence of
forward
me
to
getting
it.
old as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, I always have like this goes through all eras, and even like looking at this one, be like, oh, he's this young kid, and then you get to like Suck It and See, and you have a song like "Love Is a Laser Quest," and you're like, oh man, I'm starting to like kind of feel bad for this guy. And then he's got like his AM, and you're like, yeah, okay, he's got his swag back. But then you get to Tranquility, and you're like, oh man, he's feeling old. I'm feeling bad for this guy. And he's got this. So at the end, I'm just like, I hope he's okay. I hope in the end he's doing okay. You know?
One of the things I'm looking forward to doing Suck It and See is how some of my takes will be wildly different from the truth because it just felt very personal to me because it was a certain time in my life. I'm just waiting for people to be like, what? I'm like, yeah, I know, but that's what it feels like. Yeah. So I will be disclaimering that, to be fair. We'll let Nick do what it's actually about and me just go off on wild stories about my own life. But I've got a little hot take here. A little hot take for you.
Okay.
And then let me just play that. Oh, my mic's...
She flicks a red hot revelation off the tip of her toe.
So the ends, the kind of the hang, the guitar, Is that one of the best ends to one of their songs? Is it up there? And I was trying to think of songs where I love the final. So not like the end of the song, but like specifically the final moment of the song is really good.
The final end.
One of the ones I was thinking of was, for example, the end of Ultra Cheese is a great moment with him just singing the lyric and letting that hang. Great moment. You could probably say Certain Romance, probably with that. Some people
It's
might say
hard
Pigtails,
because it's hard to. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like the ending of Sambana. Yeah, that's a good one. I'm trying to think of like how 505 ends because of course the breakdown is like amazing. It's a good one. When I hear this like the hang, I always the way he set it up, I think of like a kind of curtain drop and then like the solo spotlight or something like that.
Like a strip club, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a bit of it doesn't really work because I think the Teddy Picker live end is superior to the album end. So with the extra stop he puts in. Balaclava's an okay end. If You Were There, Beware. That's quite a good end, isn't it? Because it's got that sort of.
Now imagine this ending. Do it right into crying line in there. It's a pretty good transition.
That sounds like some wrap-up episode business. I'm sure you can imagine if you could hazard a guess at what you think my favorite end to an Arctic Monkeys song is. What song would you go for?
What? Ooh, that's tough. I'm clocking the endings. I mean, I would just pick something. I would just pick "Suck It and See" just because I know it's your favorite song.
Yeah. No, you'd be absolutely right. That's why I say
okay.
because that end of "'Cause I'm a fool for you" is
it's a good ending.
Such a beautiful end. It's my favorite Arctic Monkeys end to a song. I can't wait for the rant that I have in that episode about how that should be a famous pop song and it's not. But
That's Where You're Wrong has a good ending too.
Yes. Very good end, isn't it? That's a
good
very
end,
cool.
yeah.
I always think that's the Stone Roses song. That's the Stone Roses vibe song. But yeah, no, there is a few. I think Old Cheese is very good, to be fair, as well as an end.
Yeah,
the bakery's got an good end as well. You know you probably didn't see me. That's a very cool end.
The strums, that close out are nice.
Yeah. There's a few, but I think this is up there with that kind of.
It's up there, yeah.
Nice end, floaty end.
Well,
that is that. But before we kind of say our goodbyes, I do the part where I introduce next week's song with the aid of AI on there as well.
You push the button and we'll do the rest.
Can't wait to phase out the ladies and gentlemen element when we next series. But ladies and gentlemen, get ready to dive into the kaleidoscopic world of Arctic Monkeys with their tantalizing track, Joining the Dots.
Wait, let me guess about the cat.
Oh yeah, cat or no cat. We haven't had a cat for a while, to be fair. It was all the rage in the album, but it slipped away.
Sure, Joining the Dots. No cat. I'll say no cat.
Well, let's see. Imagine trying to think of something colourful for the season, only to end up pulling the wool over the gullible for absolutely no reason at all. The joys of creative chaos. But fear not, because in this quirky adventure, you are all that matters these days, shaking things up and running away with the night squabbling behind you. From the smoke in your hair to the blood in the bruise and the bows on the shoes you kicked off in a fit of whimsy. Every detail is a dot waiting to be joined. So grab your imagination and prepare to connect the dots with Arctic Monkeys as they take you on a whimsical journey. I always says whimsical journey. Filled with smoke, blood, bows, and the sheer joy of joining it all together. So no cats on there. No. I think I've got this theory is still holding up that the more obscure the lyrics are that Alex writes, surreal, the more it confuses the AI, which is good for people that are scared of AI, because if Alex's lyrics can beat it, then there's hope for the human race. But yes, thank you very much for joining me this evening. And it turned out you were a savior more than our guests at this point because of the last drama.
I don't know.
We wouldn't have been able to do it. Well, I wouldn't have. It would have been. I had to do because Nick's laptop had an issue, so I had to do the watch along of the Viewforms on my own last week, and it was weird.
I see.
So having to do a full episode on my own would have been really surreal. Yeah, really, or just me talking about the album with no input from anyone else is probably what nobody wants. But I thank you very much for joining me. But we'll get you on for a wrap up in a few weeks.
Yeah,
and go through the favorites. That'll be interesting, and we can talk a bit more about the nuances. And you obviously go listen to Justin's podcast, Straight Chilling podcast, if you're into your horror or your thrillers. And if you want to hear the Arctic Monkeys one we did on The Conversation, then you can search that on YouTube.
On YouTube, yeah.
I will tag in his socials into our posts when we release this episode anyway. But check it out. It's a cool podcast. The Shaun of the Dead one was really good as well if you have an affection for that film here in the UK. But yes, thank you. And it's time to say goodbye. No, thank you. Thank you. We'll just keep saying thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
much more polite than the people that you get in strip clubs, aren't we? Probably.
Yes. Maybe we wouldn't know.
Maybe we wouldn't know. No, of course we wouldn't know.
Don't Believe the Hype is hosted and produced weekly by Nick Lee and Dan Holt. Music used in the titles is royalty-free music courtesy of Les FM. Don't forget to subscribe on your podcast player of choice to be notified every Wednesday when a new episode is released. And if you want to help us out further,
Be sure to like and review to help make us more visible to like-minded souls. We will see you next week with more of the same.